Chapter 341. Snow Lionheart 4. Yosefka Orphanage should never have existed in the Empire's lands to begin with. The fact it had lasted this long was a miracle in itself. The strange truth at the time was that Yosefka wasn't the only one. It had merely been a branch, one among many, part of a far greater organization. The place Snow had lived in was just a single piece of it. A few days before his escape, this facility's been discovered. The Empire will attack any moment now. Wrap things up and evacuate immediately. That was what the director had said before leaving, just like always. He left behind only Annalise, along with the remaining staff who worked within those walls. And now, here they were. The flames devoured the orphanage without pause. Snow ran straight into the fire, enduring the searing heat as he gasped for breath. The deeper he went, the more charred corpses he found. Children and adults alike. Bodies burned beyond recognition, soaked in fire and blood. That day, the orphanage was destined to be erased, as if it had never existed. But Snow didn't care. He only wanted to find her. And after a desperate search through the inferno, he finally saw the back of that woman, standing amid the furious blaze. Snow reached out and shouted her name without even thinking. "Mom!" Annalise turned immediately, her mouth open in surprise. It looked like she had been searching for him just as desperately. Without hesitation, she ran toward him and pulled him into a tight embrace. They held each other in the heart of the inferno. Even now, Snow still remembered the warmth of her body, despite the hellish flames around them. For a moment, he felt happy just to see her again. "Ah, Snow, you're here. You have no idea how long I've been looking for you." At that moment, Snow felt a wave of relief. Tears streamed down his face before he even realized it, and he apologized through choked sobs. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry I left without you. I'm sorry for being a bad boy. It's okay." Annalise gently stroked his hair as she rested her head on his narrow shoulder. "It's okay. You're a good, obedient boy. Everything will be fine." Those same words again. The same words where it had all begun. While holding her, Snow suddenly felt something being torn away from him, followed by a burning pain. Blood trickled from his shoulder. He turned in shock to face the woman he once called mother, only to find her savoring the taste of his flesh, having taken a massive bite out of his shoulder. Mom?" "Ah." Annalise breathed heavily. "You don't understand, Snow." She slowly licked the blood from her lips and inhaled the scent of the boy in her arms. "You don't know how long I've waited for this moment." "What?" Snow tried to ask, still unable to grasp what was happening. But Annalise buried her face into his neck again. "For Lady Yosefka." Snow froze in place, his mind blank, as Annalise continued gnawing on his tender flesh. What kind of cannibals were they? And who was Yosefka? Those questions ran through his dazed mind, but none of them mattered. What mattered was that he had been betrayed. Betrayed by his only light. Snow wept bitterly as he kept asking the same question. Why? Why had all this happened? That woman had been everything to him. And now here she was devouring him alive. Perhaps the director hadn't been the one to feast on the children. Perhaps it had been her all along. The one closest to them. From the very beginning, he had been deceived. His body and his heart, both were played with. Unforgivable. This was unforgivable. In the end, everything he'd been through had been part of a twisted play. He was just a pawn. Yes, the deaths of all those children hadn't been his fault. But the burning pain in his chest was deeper than any wound. Unforgivable. It hadn't been him. It had been them. The director. And her. Annalise. She had stopped biting. No, she was forced to. The boy's flesh had turned harder than steel. She stumbled back, staring in shock at Snow's body, now covered in radiant golden markings. Symbols she couldn't understand. Snow Lionheart stood up, his wound no longer bleeding. His golden eyes were hollow and dead. With a grim expression, he slowly stepped toward Annalise. "Snow, what are you doing?" The woman, blood still on her face, screamed and lunged. "I told you to be obedient." She struck him violently, screaming louder, "I told you to be a good boy." She kept hitting him, until a sharp pain surged through her arms. When she looked at her hands, she saw they were completely broken. Annalise felt something was wrong. She was in Class S. How could a mere boy block her attacks with nothing but his skin? But what stood before her wasn't a boy. Snow Lionheart didn't even know what was happening anymore. With a terrifying look, he lunged at Annalise, golden sigils glowing across his skin. "You were going to kill me just moments ago." With a brutal blow, he sent Annalise's body flying through the fire. "So you won't mind if I do the same, will you? You wretched brat." That day, the two of them clashed. Snow felt his body sink into the unknown as a strange force took control of him, moving him however it pleased. Everything had been destroyed. He had lost her, lost himself, lost everything around him. And so, he no longer cared about anything. That day, a mere boy with no formal training overwhelmed someone from Class S. As she lay before him, cursing him with all her might, Snow gave her a sorrowful smile. "To be honest," he murmured, "I want to try it, that thing you all were so obsessed with. I want to know what it is that drove you to do all this." Snow pinned Annalise's broken body to the ground as he leaned closer. "But unlike you, I'm just an ordinary human. I can't eat human flesh." Annalise couldn't move. After a long and brutal fight, her body was ravaged with injuries, bleeding from countless wounds. And yet, she hadn't managed to hurt him even once. Snow brought his face close to hers and whispered, "At least, I'll take a small part." "What?" "Just a small part." He opened his mouth and bit into her neck. "A small part of you will live inside me forever." The taste of her filthy blood and flesh filled his mouth, and he fought the urge to vomit. Annalise watched in disbelief, her body broken and her death imminent. No matter how much she begged her Lady Yosefka for strength, the latter gave her nothing. She was abandoned, left to die. To think that she would meet her end being eaten by someone else. She, of all people? Snow cried that day, his face drenched in blood. "Goodbye, Mom." It was over. Later, when the Empire's forces arrived, led by the former temple director, Raphael Bloodmater, they found nothing but ashes. Amidst those ashes sat a lone child, burned and bloodied, beside the corpse of a woman torn apart by countless wounds. The child had survived. The woman had not. And yet, faintly, Bloodmater felt something strange emanating from the boy's body. A power he couldn't quite comprehend. "You," he called out. But Snow Lionheart's golden eyes were distant, completely lost. Bloodmater crouched to his level and slowly pulled a thin blade from his coat. He ran the edge across the boy's cheek, drawing a shallow cut. In that moment, Snow grabbed the blade tightly, blood trickling from his hand as he stared directly into Bloodmater's eyes. The director smiled. "Come with me, child born from the ashes." That day, Raphael Bloodmater covered up the incident and took the boy with him, back home. Later, Snow would learn that everything he'd experienced was part of something that came from another continent. The continent of Ultras. And that day, the boy set a new goal for himself. A target worthy of his blade. The orphanage director, the one from whom it all began. The father. Smuff. Thus began the story of Snow Lionheart. Chapter 342. The Devil's Bargain 1. Time usually passed quickly. But not in the barren lands of the Ultras. Especially for the elite class students, who had been scattered chaotically across the Dark Continent. Each one of them was forced into their own journey, far from home, on the other side of the world. Ultras, a term used to describe the fanatical, demon-worshipping traitors who had once turned their backs on humanity and sold their souls to the devils. Here, most of the low-blood humans lived in misery, stripped of all dignity and civilization, left to roam like rabid dogs. And now, the elite students had finally come into contact with the eternal enemies who had long hunted them. Those who survived this pit of death would undoubtedly emerge stronger, assuming they survived at all. After all, who could predict what fate the witch's game, which had finally begun to unfold, would bring? Among them, on a night when the moon finally pierced the clouds, in an isolated patch of this death-ridden land, sitting atop a heap of mutilated, bloody corpses, the rogue prince calmly wiped his blade clean of both black and red blood, wearing his usual faint smile. Aegon, who had been randomly teleported during the initial transfer, had found himself surrounded by a squad of mutated humans trying to rip him apart. He killed them all with ease. He hadn't left the area since. Instead, he remained seated for hours, as if he were waiting for something. And after yet another hour, something changed. Aegon raised his head and smiled, his eyes fixed on a shadowed corner of the ruins. I have to admit, no one's ever made me wait this long before. His words were directed at the old man who stepped out of the darkness, dressed in tattered black rags. A weathered kimono and faded pants tied around the waist with a sheathed katana. Barefoot, with messy long black hair, the man emerged into the moonlight and faced the prince. Sorry, I don't really care for important folks' special appointments. The old man chuckled, pulling out a familiar flask from his waistband. I eat when I'm hungry, I drink when I'm thirsty, I sleep when I'm tired, and I fight when I have to. But I'll admit, I might have shown up earlier if you were a pretty princess instead of a rogue prince. The drunken old man let out a hearty laugh. Aegon, still crouched atop the mountain of corpses, smiled as he looked down at him. That's certainly a unique way to live. Doing whatever you want, whenever you want, especially when you've got the power to back it up. Lord Murgo, I'm just a speck in this vast universe. My strength is insignificant, hardly worth talking about. Murgo, the Lord of the Dark Hive, seemed as carefree as ever. But Aegon's eyes stayed locked on him, curious, as if he were seeing something different, something that didn't match the image of a drunken old fool. I must say, I admire your outlook, Lord Murgo, but I wonder, is that really all there is to you? What are you getting at? You can't fool my eyes so easily. I know you're more than what you pretend to be. You're special. You're giving me too much credit. Murgo shook his head with the same clumsy attitude, but his sharp eyes observed Aegon with equal interest. The description Aegon used for Murgo could just as easily apply to himself. Behind that royal face, the prince hid more than most could imagine. Let's get to the point, Murgo said. I trust you brought something worth our time. Aegon nodded. Of course. It would have gone faster if Beatrice hadn't taken her sweet time. That crazy woman? Murgo sighed. Unfortunately, she's the one handling your little group now. You're already pieces in her game. Beatrice, neither a lord nor a hollow, seemed to have amassed considerable influence among the ultras. I suppose the Empire and my idiot father have finally made their move? Otherwise, why take this long just to deal with a bunch of kids from the elite class? Murgo chuckled at how Aegon referred to his classmates, despite being one of them himself, but he confirmed the prince's guess. You're exactly right. With a heavier tone, Murgo declared, the war has already begun on the Eastern Front. The Empire launched a full-scale assault to retrieve their young talents. For the first time in ages, the Empire had become the aggressor, baited into enemy territory by the Ultras. Then should you really be wasting time here with me, if what you say is true? No need to worry. We unleashed a starving beast that won't rest until it's devoured every last one of them. A beast named Pontiff Sullivan, alongside 2 other Hollows and Madame A, who has joined them. The war is already burning that hot? Aegon scratched his head, feigning nonchalance, though clearly intrigued by what was unfolding across the continent. I wouldn't call it a war. It's more of a game. After all, everything that had happened so far had been planned and staged in advance. I agree with you on that. Aegon's gaze drifted past Murgo, landing on something, or someone, lurking behind him. Now that everyone's here, we can finally begin. Right as he said that, a tall man emerged from the darkness, dressed in a fine suit and long coat, followed by a group of men who remained behind him. Murgo was the first to greet his fellow lord. "Lord Lindman, welcome to this filthy swamp." Murgo, with a scowl, Gavid Lindman walked past his peer and locked eyes with Aegon. "Let's get this over with. Do you have the keys?" Aegon nodded. "There's no need to rush. Everything is prepared, though I can only guarantee 2 of the keys." "We've already secured the others," Gavid replied as he pulled a strange metallic bracelet from inside his cloak. "Madame A recovered the moonlight key, and a certain guest delivered the starlight key to us." At the mention of that second key, an old man stepped forward from among Gavid's followers and bowed deeply. "I offer my service to the higher blood." The elderly man, with long white hair and a pristine beard, was no stranger to Aegon, who couldn't help but let out a mocking laugh. "Well, well, look who we have here. Isn't that the immortal lion of House Starlight?" "Hey hey hey." The old man was none other than Leonidas Starlight, the former patriarch who abandoned everything the moment he lost to Ada. Leonidas Starlight has pledged his allegiance to the higher blood and proven his worth. "He shall have what he desires," Gavid declared. "My gratitude, my lord," Leonidas said, still bowing, never once showing his face. "Immortal lion? They should have called you the immortal cat," Aegon snorted. Leonidas pursed his lips, humiliated by the prince's ridicule. "Tell me, Leonidas, how does it feel to have your face in the dirt after turning your back on your family? Do you feel proud?" He said nothing, but Aegon could easily read everything through his body language. "A pathetic, filthy coward. Immortality is the only part of your title you managed to live up to. You damn cat who's lived 150 years yet failed to beat a little girl. PFFTT ha ha ha." Aegon burst into laughter, and Leonidas began to tremble. Trying to retort, the former head of House Starlight reached for his blade, only to be pinned to the ground by a crushing wave of pressure from Gavid Lindman. "What were you about to do, Leonidas?" With crimson eyes filled with killing intent, Gavid froze him in place. "My deepest apologies." On his knees, Leonidas bit his lip in frustration, unable to escape the miserable state he'd fallen into. "Yes, that's it. Stay down. Groveling suits you. That's enough." Impatient, Gavid raised the second key beside the first. "We've recovered the bracelets of House Starlight and House Moonlight. This had better not be a waste of time, Aegon Valyrian." Aegon gave a slight nod, unfazed by Gavid's thinly veiled threat. "There are 4 keys, each entrusted to the 3 great houses, and the royal family, just as I told you." Aegon then revealed 2 more identical bracelets. "I acquired the key of House Valyrian, and the one belonging to my vassals in House Sunlight. That makes all 4 pieces complete." Gavid couldn't hide his hunger as he stared at the remaining keys. With these bracelets, they could finally release him. Smiling, Aegon affirmed it once more. Chapter 343. The Devil's Bargain, 2. 17 years ago, the War of Light ended with Abraham Starlight's victory over his opponent, the immortal human demon, Dragoth. But contrary to what everyone believed, Dragoth, the only man who ever stood on equal ground with Abraham, didn't die. He is still alive. Dragoth, the former wielder of the Moonlight Sword, and the once king of the Ultras. No one in the Empire, not even my father Mikar, could kill him once the truth was discovered. So they locked him away in a secret prison, sealed with 4 keys. Now those keys had been brought together. For the first time, all that's left is for you to play your part. What Aegon had just revealed were secrets known only to a select few. Even the lords who had been entrusted with safeguarding the keys had no idea that the monster they were guarding was Dragoth himself. Dragoth was unique. Unlike the current leader of the Ultras, the rank 19 demon Astaroth, Dragoth was human, a human from the Ultras, born in filth like the rest of them, climbed his way through mountains of corpses and death until he reached the peak. He became the only contractor in history to break free from his demonic pact and completely liberate himself from the demon's control. He was a symbol within the Ultras continent. No one ever truly accepted the notion that he had died at the hands of Abraham Starlight. That's why the old ones, like Gavid Lindman, could never let go of the possibility that he might still be alive. You really are a strange one, Rogue Prince. Murgo cut in, his eyes fixed on Aegon and the keys in his hand. I know we're making a deal here, and you've held up your end of it, but I don't get it. Aren't you taking a huge risk? Oh? And how exactly am I risking anything? Aegon didn't flinch. He met Murgo's approach without a hint of hesitation. For example, don't you think I could simply take those keys from you and call off this entire thing? Faced with two lords of the Ultras and their followers, what could one prince do? How would he respond to such a threat? Aegon didn't show the slightest concern. He leaned on one hand, still smiling calmly at them. Go ahead and try. You'll find out soon enough. That reply made Murgo burst into laughter, unable to hold it back. Gavid Lindman, meanwhile, simply observed from the shadows as Aegon, speaking from atop a pile of corpses, continued to look down on them with composed arrogance. Fascinating, truly fascinating, Rogue Prince. Murgo, for the first time in years, felt something he hadn't felt in ages: ignorance. What did this strange prince possess that allowed him to remain so confident in front of two lords who could kill him in a single blow? What kind of plan, what kind of leverage gave him the right to act this high and mighty? That was when Murgo noticed it. In that dark place, beneath the moonlit sky, the moon cast its light directly upon Aegon's figure sitting atop the corpses. His thin, lean frame cast a giant shadow, so massive it encompassed both Murgo and Gavid beneath it. What he said might have sounded like empty bravado, yet no one dared to test it. We'll hold up our end of the deal. This time it was Gavid who spoke, his tone cold and steady. Glad to hear it. Aegon nodded with satisfaction, tossing the keys toward Gavid, who caught them effortlessly. Gavid Lindman, your blade will be the one to sever this thread of fate and open a new path. There's no turning back now. Gavid said nothing. He simply turned and began walking away, the others following him, including Leonidas. Only Murgo remained a while longer near Aegon. So, how does it feel, Prince, now that everything has gone exactly according to plan? Aegon shrugged, unconcerned. I don't feel anything in particular, as if this outcome had been inevitable from the start. Failure had never been a consideration. From the very beginning, Aegon had known everything would fall into place. Murgo found himself growing more and more curious about the prince. This level of confidence, just what is he hiding beneath his sleeve? For now, the Lord of the Hollow Swarm decided to stay close, if only to uncover the secret behind the mask worn by Aegon Valyrian. But I do wonder, will you really be able to fulfill your end of the deal? This was a perfectly balanced exchange. Aegon gave them the key to unleash a monster on the level of Dragoth. In return, what he wanted was something of equal weight, and Murgo wasn't worried about that. No need to worry. Lindman and I will handle it. As he spoke, Murgo pulled out his flask and attempted to take a swig, only to find it empty. Ran out. Did I say we would handle it? I meant Lindman will handle it. As always, Murgo wasted no time shifting the responsibility the moment he got the chance. Are you sure? He'll die if he goes alone. You're probably right, but who knows? Lindman's actually serious this time. Then I look forward to your performance. Aegon leapt down from the corpse mound, ready to leave now that his work was done. His last words felt like a farewell, but Murgo stopped him one last time. You're awfully greedy, Rogue Prince. Your ambition reaches the heavens. Wasn't the Empire enough for you? Murgo never expected an answer to that final question. He had asked it purely out of mischief, but the prince turned toward him, his smile fading as if he'd just heard one of the dumbest questions imaginable. What's so special about ambition that makes me crave something as trivial as Earth? That's not ambition. It's simply inevitable. That's all there is to it. Leaving Murgo stunned by the unexpected response, Aegon finally departed, setting off in search of the remaining elite students. This land is more cursed than I thought. Murgo muttered before vanishing into the shadows himself. That day, in the desolate lands of the nightmare, one of the most diabolical deals in the Empire's history was struck. A pact whose shadow would stretch deep into the future. Since the random teleportation, days passed, one after the other, each bringing new shifts and unknowns. The elite students scattered in every direction, some searching for their comrades, others choosing to move alone, desperate to survive in their own way. Among them, on a rainy night, Fry finally reached one of the cities nestled within the Forsaken Plains. He already knew how the Ultras lived, divided into two castes. The High Bloods, the elite of the second generation who had successfully integrated demon blood, made up less than 10%. They lived in great cities, more advanced and prosperous than even the Empire itself. The rest, the Low Bloods, those who failed to assimilate the demon blood, were left to rot, either as mutated creatures or as outcast humans stripped of dignity and basic rights. Now, standing before the gates of one such forsaken city, Fry had spent the last few days searching for his lost classmates. And now, frozen at the entrance, unable to tear his gaze from the sight before him, he simply lowered his head beneath the hood of his cloak and entered. "You've done well to survive this long." Calmly, he walked deeper into the heart of the city. Built of stone and brick, nothing more. Fry leapt from rooftop to rooftop, his movements catching the attention of the townspeople below as he soared silently overhead. Eventually, he reached the city's center. Standing atop a slightly taller building, he looked down with chilling indifference. Then, when he'd seen enough, he summoned his swords. Fry felt nothing as he stared, yet for some reason, the image burned itself into his memory. Severed heads, mounted on pikes above the gate like grotesque works of art. Their bodies had likely been devoured from the neck down. The heads alone were displayed at the entrance, a proud trophy for this savage city. Jan Dover and Kyle Walker, that was their names. Foolish lackeys of Ferrith, ones Fry hadn't even realized were still alive. Now he knew for certain. They weren't. He scoffed as his skin began to crack, violet aura surging violently from within. Eaten alive. They were nothing but disposable pawns for a third-rate villain once. But in the end, they were still just kids. Unlucky children caught in the chaos of a protagonist's destructive path. I can't change anything, but at the very least, I can send the bastards who did this to hell. Without an ounce of mercy, the violet aura detonated, consuming the city in a single sweep, erasing it from existence. The colossal beam of aura tore into the sky, ripping everything below into oblivion, including the heads of the dead Jan and Kyle. Ignition. That was the last word the city's inhabitants ever heard. Before the world was swallowed by darkness. Remaining elite students, 18. Chapter 344. The Cost of a Few. 1. Fry Starlight's POV. I was still wandering through the endless deserts of the Ultras continent, trudging forward as a violent sandstorm howled around me, tearing apart everything in its path. But even so, I didn't stop. I wrapped a piece of my clothing around my face, leaving only my eyes exposed, and pressed on through the blinding sand. It had been 4 days since I parted ways with the other students after our battle against the witch Beatrice. I'd spent those days running like a madman, searching for them, but I found nothing, no trace. There weren't many people in this world whose deaths would truly affect me. The ones close to me were so few, I could count them on one hand. Yet, ironically, most of them were now among the other elite students. I wasn't the kind of person to break down if people around me died randomly. I'd already grown numb after losing those I held dear again and again. But I couldn't accept the idea of losing the few who remained. Step by step, I pushed through the storm, refusing to stop. Whenever I had the chance, I opened the system interface to check on them. Affection points. Snow Lionheart, 50. Sansa Valyrian, 75. Danzo Smasher, 50. Ghost Umbra, 50. These were the only 4 whose affection points had surpassed 50, which meant I could still locate them using the third-person perspective skill. That's how I confirmed they were all still alive. But knowing their location was another matter entirely. All the terrain here on this damned continent looked the same. I kept staring at their names on the screen, even as the sand whipped into my face. Sometimes I hesitated to use the skill, afraid of what I might find. Afraid they'd be dead, torn apart by the ultras. I couldn't shake those thoughts from my mind. But deep within that anxious heart of mine, I knew I was a hypocrite, because I was still clinging to the nameless mask. I still remembered the unnamed king, the man who once fought Agaroth himself. And somewhere inside my exhausted heart, I feared him more than I feared losing my friends. If the people I cared about died one by one, what would I have left? I know myself better than anyone. If that happened, I'd become nothing more than a cold, unfeeling killing machine, incapable of caring about anyone ever again. And that is the very definition of one man, a king without a trace of emotion, nameless. The more I became like him, the more something inside me began to die. I feared I was losing myself piece by piece. Maybe that's exactly what the blue-eyed one wanted. The one who knew my future and was paving the road toward it by any means necessary. Against a power that immense, all I could do was fight back against the current of fate that kept dragging me into new suffering, hoping what I had would be enough. I could never escape my own pessimism, this cursed mindset that always turned my worst thoughts into reality. It gave me insomnia. These eyes of mine had seen enough horror to last a lifetime. Then, in a fleeting moment, my eyes fell upon another name, one I had left off to the side. Affection points. Ada Starlight, 99. My sister Ada, the last remaining member of my family. The only one who held this much affection toward me. I wondered how she was doing on the other side. How was she dealing with everything? Would she try to save me? Of course she would. With a faint smile, I kept moving forward, unaware of the storm that was unfolding across the world. The disappearance of the temple students, of the strongest generation, was no small matter. A war between the Empire and the Ultras was already inevitable. What happened only accelerated the process. Sheskler Bay, part of the Demon Sea that divided the two continents, located on the eastern shore of the Ultras continent. This bay was known for its perpetual fog, so thick it completely blocked visibility year-round. Normally, it remained quiet, teeming with nightmare creatures swimming freely below. But now that calm had been shattered. Even the dense fog could no longer hide what was coming. For the first time in history, Sheskler Bay had become a battlefield. One where armies prepared to tear each other apart. The mighty fleet of the Empire, its colossal ships casting vast shadows across the sea, had forcefully broken through the Ultras' naval defenses, clashing against them in the open waters. For countless hours, the thunder of long-range magical cannons and mortar shells echoed without pause. The nightmare creatures that roamed the seas fled in terror, unable to comprehend the madness of humans so eager to slaughter one another. Fire, you useless bastards! I know you're not out of shells. I gave them to you myself. Damn it! Iris Sunlight roared from the main mast of the Sunlight family's flagship, his flaming beard dancing with the wind. The family had taken command of this sudden assault. Fire! With every order, artillery shells ripped through the sky like rain, bombarding the enemy from above. At the same time, Iris's fists ignited with flames as he launched explosive fireballs with his own body, turning himself into a walking artillery cannon, obliterating enemy ships single-handedly. But they weren't the only ones attacking. The Ultras retaliated just as fiercely, dealing heavy damage in return. Damn it! Iris clenched his teeth, his gaze fixed on the chaotic battlefield. Hundreds of Imperial ships clashed against hundreds of Ultras, who refused to let them advance an inch. Iris had rushed to the front lines the moment he heard about what had happened to his sons and his nephew. Yet, to his surprise, it was as if the enemy fleet had been waiting for him. Iris, the situation's bad. He turned to the voice beside him, a younger man clad in a crimson combat suit, with blazing red hair and an eye patch over one eye. It was Gal Varian Sunlight, second in command of the Sunlight family and father of Phoenix Sunlight. Gal, what happened? With a grim expression, Gal pointed westward. Something's tearing through our ships on that side. Iris narrowed his eyes, trying to peer through the thick mist. Then he saw it, destruction sweeping across that flank. What the hell is going on? Asterisk Rea Aghag. Asterisk. Before he could grasp the situation, a monstrous, gut-wrenching scream pierced his eardrums like a dagger. In perfect sync with that cursed cry, one of the ships was shredded into pieces. Then he saw it. A knight clad in dark armor, carrying a colossal sword on his back. He leaped into the sea, running wildly across its surface on 3 limbs, his body defying logic as the ocean became his hunting ground. With a single swing, he demolished another ship and slaughtered everyone aboard. That knight was no ordinary being. He was one of the Hollow. He was Pontiff Sullivan. Tearing through everything in sight, the Pontiff was ready to keep rampaging, until a massive beam of fire struck him from the sky, blasting him hundreds of meters back. He landed unharmed, glaring furiously at Iris, who now hovered above the battlefield in midair. So, you're the one they were talking about? The Hollow or whatever you are. Iris's body flared with blazing heat, boiling the sea beneath him. Then burn in hell. Channeling a torrent of flame, Iris launched a meteor-sized fireball straight at the Pontiff, aiming to erase him from existence. But Sullivan roared and leapt into the air, his sword cloaked in dark aura. With one swing, he split the fireball in 2 and continued charging forward. At that moment, Gal Varian appeared beside him and delivered a missile-like punch to the Pontiff's side. The impact sent him flying once again. Gal, still airborne, stared in shock as Sullivan stood up, completely unharmed. Be careful, Gal. This bastard is SS Plus class. I figured that much already, brother. Ignoring the constant barrage of shells overhead, the Sunlight brothers focused their attention on the monstrous Pontiff, who snarled and lunged at them. Chapter 345. The cost of a few, 2 days had passed since the war began. Countless lives had already been lost. And amidst the ceaseless battle, no one noticed the blood slowly rising from the corpses left to rot. Now nothing more than empty, dried-out husks. That blood rose into the air, forming a colossal celestial mass that hovered over the battlefield. It had grown so massive that even the warriors below began to notice. The blood-soaked orb spun slowly for a long time, until it exploded at her signal. Blood rained from the skies like a crimson storm. But those drops were not water. They were concentrated blood that exploded the moment they touched their targets. The fog gradually turned crimson, colored by the sheer number of deaths caused by the blood rain detonating across the battlefield, slaughtering hundreds at once. The most terrifying part was how the blood of the dead would gather again, forming yet another blood sphere, repeating the cycle over and over in a brutal process orchestrated by a single person. Ah! How boring! Sitting at the bow of one of the enemy ships, unfazed by the cries and wails around her, the Blood Queen Evelyn complained about the situation. The woman who once emerged naked from a man's stomach now wore full black armor. Her black hair and clean face exposed the spider tattoo on her neck. As she sighed, a bolt of lightning shaped like a massive arrow struck and destroyed the ship to her left. Yet she didn't react. Her crimson eyes scanned the battlefield until they locked onto a man with neatly combed blonde hair holding a massive bow, the one responsible for the earlier strike, Ivar Valerian, an SS rank combatant. Her gaze shifted again, locking onto a woman in ragged clothes wearing a golden helmet and sporting red hair. Another SS rank fighter. Aside from them, there were only the Sunlight geezers. None of them are appealing. With a wave of her hand, another blood sphere formed from the lives still pouring out around her. Among the Empire's ships was one belonging to the Moonlight family, carrying their current lord, Frost Moonlight. At first, he seemed intriguing to her, but she quickly lost interest. He'll die after just 1 or 2 rounds of play. Frost, who had only recently reached S rank, wasn't attractive enough, and orders had been given to keep him alive. Someone else wanted him. This is boring. With a frown, Evelyn questioned why she had come at all. Would have been better to stay with my toys. I see the Blood Queen has already grown bored of this battle. Evelyn turned to see a large, heavily bandaged man appear behind her out of nowhere. And who are you? She looked him up and down, half smiling. He'll last a while, but he's ugly. As if reading her thoughts, the hulking man introduced himself with haste. My name is Gvardiel, the Empyrean assigned to Lord Godfrey. Empyrean? You? Evelyn was surprised. The odd man before her was clearly SS rank, putting him on equal footing with her and the other lords. Gvardiel nodded. That's right. It made little sense for someone of his strength to be just an Empyrean, but Evelyn quickly lost interest once she realized they were on the same side. So what brought you here, Empyrean Gvardiel? I believe I made myself very clear when I told those damned lords to stay at least 3 ships away from me. She complained loudly as Gvardiel apologized with a humorous grin on his grotesque face. My apologies, my apologies. That archer blew up my ship a while ago, so I ended up here by accident. Then leave. She casually waved her hand at Gvardiel like he was an annoying bug, but he remained where he stood, staring out at the chaotic battlefield rocked by explosions and screaming corpses swallowed by the sea. The Empire's army kept advancing thanks to their overwhelming numbers. The Ultras were barely half their size, and their only hope was to rely on their elite fighters. Alongside the Pontiff and Evelyn stood Madame A, the Hollow Smuff, and Gvardiel himself. Strange, isn't it? How life constantly reminds us that human lives are never equal. Gvardiel gestured toward the ever-growing number of corpses. We've slaughtered them, butchered their kin, razed their lands, and they barely reacted. But now they launch a war of their own just because we kidnapped a few children who don't even make up 0.1% of their population. He laughed, continuing, an emperor's son, a lord's heir, a church's chosen. Names that carried so much weight for their leaders that they overshadowed the tens of thousands of other lives lost without a second thought. I wonder how the common people of that empire feel, being forced into a war by orders from people who've never even glanced their way. Hee. Hey! Gvardiel's ramble was cut off by Evelyn, whose suffocating crimson aura flared in his face. Didn't I tell you to leave already? Faced with her crushing pressure, Gvardiel showed no signs of distress. On the contrary, he seemed to welcome it, laughing loudly. My apologies, my apologies. I'll vacate your personal space, milady. Despite the polite words, Gvardiel answered her pressure with his own, unleashing a wave of dark aura. But he wasn't foolish enough to provoke an internal fight. Not yet. With his filthy smile lingering, Gvardiel left Evelyn's ship, leaving her alone once more. This is exactly why I hate those highborn bastards. Evelyn sighed, continuing to conjure more blood spheres. I'd better find someone to play with, or they won't like what I'll do next. She attacked from afar while the Pontiff held the front line. Though the Empire was steadily advancing thanks to sheer numbers, their losses weren't insignificant. Worse, their pace was far too slow for a mission that demanded urgency. Especially when trying to rescue a group of youths they didn't even know were still alive. The words Gvardiel had spat out earlier hadn't been wrong. How many husbands had left their wives behind? How many fathers had hugged their children for the last time before marching into war? How many dreamers had their hopes stolen, dying in vain, blown apart by a stray cannon shell, or butchered by an enemy whose face they never even saw? This was the war the Empire's leaders had forced upon their people out of nowhere. Confirmed what Gvardiel said. Human lives were never equal. What's taking you so long? Without warning, the entire atmosphere shifted. A violent thunderstorm howled into existence, descending from the heavens above. Your enemies stand before you, so why aren't they dead yet? With every word, serpents of lightning exploded across the sky, as all eyes turned to the terrifying aura descending upon them. A single man stood there, clad in majestic golden armor from head to toe, wielding a fearsome spear in one hand, and another forged of pure lightning in the other. The Emperor Mikar Valerian had finally entered the battlefield. His golden eyes stared down upon the ultras below. With a simple gesture, bolts of thunder rained down like furious serpents, crashing upon the ultras' fleet and obliterating them in brutal fashion. The lightning strikes continued, one after another, as Mikar incinerated his enemies without mercy, single-handedly turning the tide of battle. "Let's end this farce, once and for all." With those words, Mikar descended upon the Hollows and the remaining lords, while the Empire unleashed its full might in a final, merciless push. Chapter 346. Mikar Valerian vs. Astaroth 1. Without warning, Mikar Valerian appeared, the final boss of the Empire, descending upon the battlefield. Wearing the mighty Fume Knight armor and wielding the Sunfire Spear in his right hand, Mikar shook the heavens as a terrifying storm of lightning slithered through the clouds like giant serpents. The Emperor showed no mercy. With a simple motion of his hand, lightning bolts crashed down, illuminating the sky and violently tearing through the Ultra's fleet. The lightning incinerated ships and humans alike, setting them ablaze and ripping them apart one after another. The thunder was so deafening it drowned out every other sound. The screams, the tearing of flesh and bone, all vanished beneath the roar of nature's fury. Thousands perished in that single assault, but among them a few survived. The lords and the Hollows withstood the onslaught, their eyes locked on Mikar, who floated calmly above their heads. So this is the current Emperor. Removing his reading glasses, the orphanage director Smuff stepped forward, unfazed by the lightning that had annihilated everything around him. "Let's see what the strongest man in the Empire has to offer." As he spoke, Smuff lowered his stance and stomped with such force that veins bulged beneath his darkened skin. Gathering all his power, the Hollow launched himself into the air, soaring toward the figure in the sky. Mikar reacted instantly. With a flick of his hand, a column of lightning shot downward, swallowing Smuff entirely. "Return to where you belong." His voice rang out with the same ferocity as the storm, but to his surprise, Smuff emerged from the lightning column, still charging upward. His clothes had been burned away, revealing his disfigured, coal-black skin. His body was massive and grotesque, yet he'd absorbed the strike without injury. "Disgusting," Mikar muttered, visibly disgusted by the sight before him. "Sorry, but piercing this body won't be so easy," Smo boasted, coating his fists with a terrifying amount of dark aura as he targeted Mikar. But the Emperor showed no concern. Adjusting his stance and gripping the Sunfire Spear tightly, his golden eyes blazed as the weapon ignited in flame, so hot it warped the air around them. "I've faced many like you before, fools who blindly rely on their so-called toughness." With each word, the fire around his spear intensified, growing into a devastating inferno. "Your arrogance led you straight into my domain, foolish Hollow." Then, like a human warhead, Mikar hurled the spear, now a blazing projectile, straight at Smuff with terrifying accuracy. Smuff felt the overwhelming power it carried but was confident he could endure it. Taking a defensive stance, he prepared to absorb the impact mid-air. "I'll block it, then strike back the moment he's disarmed." His dark aura twisted into a metallic cocoon, shielding his entire body like iron. He was certain of his defense, but his expression collapsed the moment the Sunfire Spear tore through his arms, then his chest, and burst out of his back, leaving behind a charred, gaping wound. He spat blood, staring at the massive hole in his chest, then at the flaming spear that returned to the Emperor's hand. "You thought you could block that? Idiot." With his right hand, Mikar reclaimed the spear. With his left, he raised his palm, black lightning coiling in his grip. "Who exactly do you think I am?" The black lightning surged into a colossal beam, obliterating Smuff and launching him far into the depths of the sea. "This is bad. He's stronger than I expected. Hee hee. So this is what reaching the peak of SS Plus looks like." Madame A. Gvardiel and Evelyn gathered as soon as they saw the Emperor's destructive display. "Hey, did that hollow bastard die?" Gvardiel asked, But before anyone could answer, Smuff resurfaced, clutching his chest, blood pouring from his mouth and nose. His weapon, it's not ordinary. Resisting the flames still burning within his body, Smuff joined the others. At that moment, Mikar descended like a meteor, his golden eyes glowing through the fog. The sheer pressure of his presence silenced them. None of the four dared move. What's wrong? Why aren't you attacking? Step by step, Mikar advanced across the sea's surface as if it were his own ground. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. So come at me, all of you. In a flash, Mikar erased the distance between them, appearing in their midst. All four SS-ranked fighters lunged at him at once, but the Emperor was too fast, cloaked in black lightning as he effortlessly dodged every strike. Simultaneously, he spun his flaming spear with expert precision, sending them all flying one by one. Madame tried to surround him with her speed, but she was stunned when Mikar surpassed her in an instant. With a rocket-like thrust of his spear, he impaled her with ease and hoisted her high into the air. Say goodbye. With a single motion, Mikar unleashed a blazing wave from the Sunfire spear, incinerating Madame A as she screamed, her body consumed by fire at a terrifying speed. At that moment, both Smuff and Gvardiel lunged at him from opposite sides, hurling devastating punches. Mikar blocked the first with his free hand, while the second slammed into the shoulder bearing his spear. The fume knight armor absorbed the impact instantly, before Mikar repelled both attackers with a devastating surge of black lightning. This Emperor is insane. Evelyn chuckled as she backed away from the battlefield. I don't get paid enough to deal with this shit. See ya, and good luck, everyone. Mikar tossed Madame A's charred corpse aside as she struggled faintly, then turned his palm toward Evelyn, gathering black lightning once again to finish her off. But he froze when a tendril of divine lightning struck his head from above, so powerful it evaporated the surrounding seawater, creating a vast crater. Unfazed, Mikar slowly raised his head, his armor enduring the deadly sparks trying to tear him apart. In that instant, the Emperor spotted the source of the strike. Fall back. You're no match for him. The voice was venomous and rough, the aura vile. Black wings, long horns, ash-gray skin, snow-white hair. So, you finally decided to show up. The battlefield plunged into chaos as the 19th-ranked demon, Astaroth, appeared. It was their first face-to-face meeting since the raid on the Ultras. Mikar calmly ascended to meet him in the sky. King of humans, you're toying with a power you cannot endure. Astaroth unleashed his full pressure, trying to bring Mikar down. But the Emperor met his gaze with the same chilling calm, and detonated his own overwhelming aura. You misunderstand something, demon. The Sunfire spear ignited once more, while Mikar's body was wrapped in black lightning. You're the weakest one here, so give it your all, try to endure. And with that final word, Mikar suddenly appeared beside Astaroth. His speed so immense it felt like teleportation, swinging his spear in a blazing arc. Because if you don't, this will end far quicker than you think. Boom! A thunderous explosion erupted as Astaroth caught the Sunfire spear with both hands, summoning lightning to block the searing flames. Both unleashed their full auras, clashing with such force that the sky quaked, the embodiment of raw, divine power. Lowly human, Astaroth roared, trying to retaliate, but the spear's heat surged beyond control, overwhelming him. He retreated swiftly, but Mikar chased after him relentlessly, raining down blows. People think the first emperor, Kazes Valerian, was just a swordsman. Boom! The battlefield exploded once more in waves of infernal flame. But they forget he fought from every position. Vermithor in his right hand, and Sunfire in his left. Wielding a weapon that blazed with the heat of the sun itself, the SS-grade Sunfire spear was a terror incarnate. Mikar and Astaroth moved so fast they left afterimages in the air, exchanging thousands of strikes in mere seconds. Mikar with his spear, Astaroth with his bare hands. Their impact churned the sea into a raging storm, shockwaves ripping through water and sky alike. The Empire's soldiers watched in awe as their emperor stood against a demon high rank, and their courage surged. They rose again with blazing resolve, just in time to notice the green auras enveloping their bodies. That's when they saw it. A massive fleet of white ships emerging from the rear, bearing the insignia of the church. At the front were Ramiel Calestis, Michael Platini, and 7 Holy Maiden candidates. The church's forces spread across the battlefield, healing the wounded and restoring morale. "What are you waiting for? Follow the Emperor," shouted Iris Sunlight, still locked in battle with Pontiff Sullivan, shoulder to shoulder with his brother. "The enemy isn't dead yet. Keep fighting, until we wipe them out completely." "Yes, let's go. Kill them all." Riding the momentum the Emperor had forged, the Imperial side surged forward with everything they had. The remaining Hollows and Lords were immediately attacked by Ivar Valerian and Melina Maiden, both of whom had remained in the heart of the battle. The church's support rained down again, flaming artillery tearing through the skies. The Ultras had already lost their fleet to the Emperor's lightning. They had no defense left. All of it happened because of one man. Chapter 347. Mikar Valerian versus Astaroth. 2. A man who fought Astaroth, the High Demon, one-on-one, and shattered the heavens in their wake. Both were terrifyingly fast, wielding lightning as their weapon of choice. Astaroth punched with monstrous power. Mikar countered with divine precision. Lightning unleashed. Furious, Astaroth released his full power, manifesting as a storm of gray lightning that swelled and surged around him. "I told you before, you pathetic human." Raising both hands toward Mikar, the lightning morphed into a colossal storm, large enough to engulf an entire mountain. "You're nothing but an insect, more resilient than the rest." "Sure, but still just an insect." With a thunderous roar, Astaroth unleashed a blast of lightning that split the sky in two, swallowing Mikar whole. The attack left everyone below stunned. "If that had been aimed at us, we'd all be dead." Even while locked in combat with the deranged Pontiff Sullivan, Iris and his brother Gal, both peak SS rankers, managed to endure. The difference in power between fighters like Mikar and Astaroth and someone like the Pontiff was overwhelming. Even if the Pontiff had already reached SS+, the gap between him and those who stood at the absolute pinnacle was terrifying. Astaroth laughed wildly, admiring the destruction his attack had wrought. But that grin vanished when Mikar emerged, still in one piece, his face covered by both hands. The Emperor's armor flared with a radiant aura of 2 colors, golden light, which shielded him from the infernal strike, and green energy that continuously healed his wounds. He blocked it. Astaroth stared in disbelief, unable to comprehend how Mikar had survived his ultimate attack unscathed. Iris, watching from below, understood the reason. The Fume Knight's armor, the greatest defense ever worn by the first Emperor, Kazes Valerian. It was no ordinary gear. The Fume Knight's armor siphoned aura directly from the wearer to form a nearly impenetrable barrier, and it housed a vast reserve of divine power that continuously regenerated its user. Perfect suit for war. When worn by Mikar Valerian, an SS+ powerhouse, alongside the Sunfire Spear, the Emperor became an unstoppable force. Where did all that confidence go, demon? Electricity swirled around Mikar, taking the shape of a new spear. A spear mightier than the tallest peaks. With a roar, he hurled the enormous weapon like a missile, striking Astaroth with such force that the demon was blasted away. Mikar pursued him instantly, teleporting with a burst of lightning. Wielding the Sunfire Spear, he pierced Astaroth thousands of times in rapid succession, trying to tear through his thick hide. The demon screamed in rage and retaliated by unleashing his own full power. "I'll kill you here and now." Boom! The two clashed violently, their auras entangled in a brilliant storm of gold and black, exchanging thunderous blows mid-air. Lightning against lightning. Only one of them would walk away as the true master of thunder. After countless devastating clashes, Wounds began to accumulate across Astaroth's massive frame, while Mikar's armor remained barely scratched. "Damn that cursed armor," Astaroth snarled. But Mikar silenced him with a thunder-infused punch straight to the face. "Your kind has always looked down on humanity, and you still do." Boom! Grabbing Astaroth by the face, Mikar drove him deep into the raging sea, slamming them both into the ocean floor. He roared as he surged lightning through every molecule in his body, preparing for a final, obliterating blow. Lightning formation. Plasma detonation. Mikar's full power erupted, vaporizing the ocean water around them and forming a vast crater at the bottom of the sea. Dragging Astaroth deeper and deeper, the Emperor buried the demon beneath sheer force. Reawaf. Astaroth, now bloodied and broken, screamed with madness as he unleashed the last of his energy. A colossal wave of lightning exploded from him, blasting Mikar upward until he crashed into a collapsing ocean current. Mikar soared back into the sky, gasping for air. Below him, Astaroth began charging a new, far deadlier attack. This one could erase Mikar and everything behind him. "He still has this much power left?" Mikar gritted his teeth. He had struck Astaroth thousands of times. But the demon's vitality was absurd, relentless. Meanwhile, Mikar's own strength had begun to drain. Were it not for the healing power of the Fume Knight's armor, he wouldn't have lasted this long. Astaroth let out a bone-rattling scream that threatened to rupture eardrums, compressing particles of lightning into one final, annihilating strike. D. The gray lightning was so bright it erased everything from sight. Inside the blinding light, Mikar raised the Sunfire Spear once again. Clenching his teeth and drawing every last drop of aura from within, the Emperor channeled his lightning aura with full force, merging it with the scorching Sunfire blaze, flames as hot as the sun itself. He wagered everything on this final strike. Infusing all his remaining strength into the spear, now empowered by both fire and black lightning, Mikar's rocket launcher mechanism activated one last time. With a thunderous scream, he hurled the spear straight toward Astaroth's raging explosion. Gray lightning clashed against the fiery spear, an unstoppable force against an immovable object. The screams of Mikar and Astaroth merged into one, followed by a deafening explosion that shook the entire world. The impact caused a massive quake, silencing the battlefield as the ocean itself recoiled in awe, the waters pushed away by the sheer magnitude of their collision. Through Astaroth's storm, the Sunfire Spear pierced, its radiance shining like a dying star. Seconds later, the blinding light began to fade. The first to emerge was Mikar, gasping for breath beneath the Fume Knight's helmet. Blood poured from his brow, leaking from his eyes, nose, and mouth as his right arm, used to throw the spear, hung shattered and limp. Still, his golden eyes were fixed on the figure below. Astaroth, face darkened and stunned, reached toward his right side, only to find nothing. Nothing but emptiness. Blood gushed from his mangled body, pooling around the Sunfire Spear that had obliterated half his torso and severed his right arm. Astaroth collapsed instantly, screaming as he realized he couldn't regenerate. Impossible! 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 He refused to believe it. Refused to accept that Mikar's spear had pierced through his ultimate attack and erased half his body. Falling into utter disarray, he crawled backward, still trying to deny what had happened. And then he stopped. Standing before him was Mikar, bleeding, battered, but victorious. "I told you," Mikar panted heavily. "You were the weakest link here." He raised his left hand, and the Sunfire Spear flew back into his grasp. Its flames reflected in Astaroth's wide, trembling eyes. "This is the end. Curse you, filthy human." The flames surged around the spear, crackling violently. At that moment, Astaroth finally understood. He was going to die. True fear twisted his face for the first time. Death, a mighty demon, about to fall to a single human. He couldn't accept it, yet it was real. But just when Mikar thrust the spear forward to finish it, it stopped. An invisible force halted the weapon inches from Astaroth's face. And from the void, a slender hand appeared, gently grabbing the tip of the Sunfire spear and pushing it aside with ease. "Apologies, but I can't allow you to kill him." Mikar stared in disbelief. She had come out of nowhere. A strange woman with pale skin, much like Astaroth's grayish hue, wearing a refined violet dress and a small hat perched atop her purple hair. Her eyes were jet black with glowing violet pupils. With a single wave of her hand, she released a pulse that sent Mikar flying back several meters. He dug his heels into the ground, managing to stay upright but clearly strained. Bracing himself, Mikar shouted, "Who are you?" "Ah, forgive my rudeness." The mysterious woman curtsied with eerie elegance, lifting the hem of her skirt. "Rank 17 among the high demons. Beatrice sends her regards." Mikar stared at her, stunned. Rank 17. The words struck like thunder. He had just finished battling rank 19, Astaroth, and now an even higher rank demon had appeared out of thin air. "Shall we begin the real party?" With a wicked smile, Beatrice drew her staff. She was ready to play again. Chapter 348. Mikar Valerian vs. Beatrice, 1. Rank 17 Beatrice. The sudden appearance of yet another demon shook the battlefield, revealing a side of Emperor Mikar Valerian that had never been seen before. Beatrice had arrived in her true body this time, unleashing her overwhelming aura without restraint. An aura that far exceeded that of Astaroth, who lay defeated behind her. "I will show no mercy to anyone who interferes with the witch's game." Wearing her signature smile and brandishing her maestro's wand, Beatrice prepared for battle. Mikar, clenching his flaming spear, let out a thunderous roar. "The church!" His cry thundered across the battlefield like a storm breaking the sky, heard by every soul present. Among those who heard it were the bishops of the church, still reeling from the events moments earlier. The Empire had crushed the Ultras, especially after Mikar's victory over Astaroth. But they hadn't accounted for the emergence of another upper-ranked demon appearing from thin air. "Pour your damn holy power into me." Cornered and forced into another fight against a high-ranking demon, Mikar grit his teeth as Sunfire Spear surged with renewed lightning. At that moment, a torrent of holy energy descended like a waterfall onto his body, absorbed instantly into the fume knight armor. His wounds healed at an astonishing speed as 7 saint candidates pooled their strength to restore him. "You truly are gallant, Mikar Valerian. Even after surviving a brutal fight against Astaroth, you're still willing to fight. Shut that damn mouth of yours." Using his barely healed right hand, Mikar hurled the blazing Sunfire Spear straight at Beatrice. Yet the demoness did not flinch. Instead, she twirled her wand playfully. "Block it for me, Gloom, my one and only bringer of victory." The moment her chant ended, a deafening explosion roared across the battlefield. Mikar's spear, the same one that brought down Astaroth, was stopped cold by a massive black shield that appeared from nowhere. The black shield, Gloom, not only absorbed the impact but retaliated with a pulse of aura that sent the spear, and Mikar, flying back hundreds of meters in a single wave. Before he could recover, Beatrice appeared in front of him. "There's no use in struggling now, Emperor of Men. They may heal your wounds, but they cannot restore that broken, exhausted body of yours." As her words rang out, hundreds of celestial orbs manifested behind her, all firing beams of aura in rapid succession. Mikar darted between them, his body cloaked in black lightning. Astaroth may have been worthless, but defeating him was no small feat. Holy power could heal injuries, but it couldn't return Mikar to peak condition, not after the brutal toll Astaroth had taken. Unleashing a storm of radiant destruction, Beatrice showcased terrifying magical might. Each of her 100 celestial orbs carried enough power to obliterate an elite awakened being. But she was annoyed by the endless stream of holy power still pouring into Mikar. With a flick of her wand, She turned toward the fleets still clashing in the distance. Kill them for me, my dearest shadow. A catastrophe struck the church's fleet as shrieks of the saint candidates rang out, skewered by dark spears that emerged from nowhere and slaughtered them instantly. The bishops stood frozen, unable to sense the attacks until it was too late. Mikar, now trapped in a storm of relentless attacks, realized he had only the strength of the fume knight armor left to rely on. "What's wrong, human king?" Beatrice ascended into the skies, her voice mocking as she laughed coldly. "No need for that face, even with all their support, nothing would change. You see, you are the weakest one here, Mikar gritted his teeth, refusing to yield.
Lightning formation.
Black lightning converged around him at terrifying speed. Dark century spears. Dozens of black lightning spears formed and launched, crashing into Beatrice's celestial orbs and detonating them in a chain reaction that sent waves of energy rippling across the battlefield. "Well done. That was splendid." Beatrice clapped mockingly as Mikar gasped, struggling to stay upright after unleashing such an attack. "Now worry about my next move." With elegant grace, she twirled her wand as her body surged with violet aura. The entire bay of Sheskalar trembled. The earth shook. Eyes turned skyward, stunned by the phenomenon unfolding above. "Bury them for me." Beatrice's laugh echoed like a curse across the skies, as the heavens themselves tore open, unveiling a cataclysm no one should ever witness more than once in a lifetime. "This," Mikar muttered in disbelief, his voice trailing off, only for Beatrice to confirm it with a twisted smile. "It's a meteor, a big one. Big enough to bury you all right here." Kikiki, clad in the fume knight armor and gripping his spear tightly, Mikar Valyrian cursed aloud. That wasn't a meteor. It was a miniature planet, one large enough to erase everything in the region. A catastrophe like this was felt by all those across the Ultras continent, who sensed the sheer magnitude of the disaster approaching. "There are too many of you for me to deal with one by one. So, wouldn't this be the most efficient method?" Before them stood Beatrice, having called down a massive flaming meteor hurtling toward them with terrifying speed. Mikar took a deep breath, pulling in every ounce of air around him. "What will you do now, Mikar Valyrian?" The meteor was already above their heads. "You could dodge it easily, but what about your people? Will you save them, or abandon them?" Beatrice's voice teased and mocked him. But the Emperor didn't answer. Instead, he unleashed his full aura, burning through the last of his SS Plus tier reserves until there was nothing left. Shrouded in black lightning, Mikar let out a primal roar that shook the heavens before launching himself with the Sunfire spear straight toward the blazing meteor, now threatening to devour everything. He passed Beatrice without so much as a glance, witnessed by all warriors still left on the battlefield. All eyes locked onto the Emperor, who poured every shred of his might into that one final strike. The meteor grew rapidly in Mikar's golden eyes, and despite the looming death, he smiled. "I suppose this is what you always wanted from me, isn't it, Father?" For some reason, a flood of memories surged through him just before the moment of impact. Lightning crackled violently, clashing with the searing fires of Sunfire. Both powers collided with the massive meteor, which bore down with overwhelming force. Mikar felt every bone in his body break, every fiber tear, every muscle rupture. The pain was beyond description, certainly fatal, if not for the fume knight armor which protected and healed him at the same time. His screams echoed for what felt like an eternity, until something unbelievable happened. The meteor exploded, shattered completely by writhing serpents of black lightning. The destruction sent fiery shards raining down across the battlefield. It was a breathtaking sight, one that drove the soldiers of the Empire to cheer and roar in elation at the Emperor who had saved them from annihilation. But they hadn't yet realized. Mikar Valyrian was falling. His body hovered briefly in the air before collapsing. His armor dented and cracked. His strength gone. "Impressive, Emperor." Beatrice appeared beside his broken body. "But what now?" Powerless, unable to move, Mikar could only stare at the witch, still unscathed. I didn't think you were the type to make such foolish decisions. And now look, you're going to die. Just like the rest of them. She waved her wand slowly. Mikar exhaled, unable to even speak. He hadn't expected to make such a stupid choice. He had destroyed the meteor, but lost the battle. If it were him, he would have cut the meteor down without effort. Mikar laughed bitterly, spitting blood as the image of that monstrous man from House Starlight surfaced in his mind. The fourth emperor, the wielder of the strongest spear in the empire. Mikar Valyrian was on the brink of death as Beatrice, demon of rank 17, approached to deal the final blow. He closed his eyes and waited for the end, but it didn't come. Instead, a pillar of divine energy descended from the heavens, blasting Beatrice away and healing Mikar's fatal wounds. The witch quickly retreated, lifting her gaze to the sky, at the new arrival. Trying to copy my entrance? That's not very nice, darling. Shut your filthy mouth, wretched demon. Bathed in brilliant holy light that breathed life back into the battlefield, Saintess Urasha descended with majestic grace, her overwhelming SS+ tier aura radiating power and authority. Mikar, now regaining some composure, barely stood as he whispered, "The Saintess." Chapter 349. Mikar Valyrian versus Beatrice. 2. Stand up, Emperor. Your battle is not over yet. Urasha spoke calmly, standing behind him. The church and the imperial family had never been allies. In fact, they had once plotted to annihilate his bloodline. But now, with upper demons rising one after another, everyone knew where their blades needed to point. At the same moment, the high bishops appeared beside Urasha, along with Ivar Valyrian and Luke Valyrian, Mikar's brothers. Sorry we're late. It seemed Luke, the mage, had been the one responsible for teleporting Urasha to the battlefield, barely saving them all in time. Elsewhere, the Hollow and Gvardiol regrouped with Beatrice. The only one who did not retreat was Pontiff Sullivan, still locked in fierce combat with the Sunlight Brothers. Now standing face to face, Urasha empowered everyone around her, infusing them with her holy energy, boosting them beyond their limits, up to 120% of their power. Listen closely, gentlemen. My role as a saintess is support. Urasha continued speaking as she relentlessly launched waves of sacred power at Beatrice. I may not contribute much in direct combat, but I can save every one of you no matter your condition, even if you're dead. And my power counters that wretched Villainous. Forming a massive field of light, Urasha encompassed everyone within it, empowering them all. So don't hesitate. Strike with everything you have. No one responded with words. Instead, Mikar stepped forward first, gripping his spear, now burning anew. This is more than enough. With the saint's support and the others at his side, the tide of battle turned once more. Despite finding herself surrounded by a multitude of new enemies, Beatrice kept smiling, even though she was now at a numbers disadvantage. Killing all of you is going to be a bit harder now. Everyone braced themselves for the fight, ignoring the witch's taunts. Mikar surged forward, wielding the Sunfire Spear, followed by his brothers and the bishop. All of them drew power from Urasha's divine field as they charged at Beatrice and the remaining hollows. We're in dire straits, guys. Gvardiol laughed, summoning his shadow. We'll have to fight to survive. Smuff reinforced his body while Evelyn groaned behind them. All were ready to give it everything they had in this final clash, until Beatrice suddenly clapped her hands with a cheerful smile and closed her eyes. Oh, sorry, but this battle is already over. No one understood what she meant. Opening her violet eyes, Beatrice smirked wickedly, twirling her staff once more. You've already lost. With those words, a sudden tremor rocked the ground beneath them. The sea split apart as strange black walls rose, trapping Mikar and everyone around him within a colossal cube that engulfed a massive portion of the Shezgler Bay. They tried to break through immediately, but the cube unleashed overwhelming waves of destructive aura and an oppressive gravity field that immobilized them all. The cube had sealed them in, and it began to shrink slowly. Resistance is futile. This is a spell crafted by my great teacher, Izalith herself. Eternal Seal. Mikar and his forces vanished within the obsidian cube, swallowed without warning. The cube continued to compress at an alarming speed, shrinking from a towering barrier that once blanketed most of the bay to a small object Beatrice held in one hand. I set this spell up while the Emperor was distracted fighting Astaroth. It takes a very long time to prepare due to its complexity, but with all of you so busy fighting and unaware of what was happening around you, trapping you in it turned out to be laughably easy. Then I waited, hoping to catch a big fish, but I caught a whale instead. Kihihi. Beatrice cackled maniacally, flicking her staff to part the sea. Then she tossed the cube deep into the ocean and sealed it beneath the waves. The downside to this spell is that I can't affect or touch those trapped inside. But they won't be coming out anytime soon anyway. Kihi. With a wave of her hand, Beatrice summoned the raging pontiff, who had been trapped with the rest of the imperial forces, and flung him among the other hollows. Calm this rabid dog down for me, would you guys? Wearing her playful smile, she left Gavardial and the others to fend off the enraged pontiff as she slowly hovered above, savoring the chaos she had unleashed. There, now no one can interrupt my little game. With the Emperor, the Saint, and most of the Imperial forces sealed deep beneath the sea, Beatrice had successfully repelled the Empire's assault, accomplishing what Astaroth had failed to do, even as he struggled to recover. She approached him at once, not wanting to miss the chance to mock the defeated demon. Hey, would you look at this? Isn't this the mighty, arrogant Astaroth himself? She burst into laughter while Astaroth grit his teeth, too weak to respond as his body struggled to regenerate. What would Lord Weskier say if he saw you like this? I bet he'd call you pathetic, You damn witch. Arg. Astaroth groaned in agony, spitting up black blood as he lost control of his temper. You're a fool, Astaroth. No wonder the great lord hasn't bothered to appear before a useless wretch like you. Beatrice shook her head, then touched Astaroth and instantly teleported him back to his fortress. Drag your defeat back with you and bury yourself in shame, she muttered before vanishing, satisfied with what she had accomplished. Now then, shall we continue our game? And just like that, the rescue force that had once carried a glimmer of hope for Fry and his companions was wiped out. This world was far too small. News of the catastrophe reached the Empire almost immediately. After a thunderous battle in the Bay of Sheskler, the Emperor, along with the church and family fleets, had succeeded in destroying the Ultra's forces and defeating the rank 19 greater demon, Astaroth. But a sudden intervention from another demon, who had remained hidden until now, caused the Empire to lose a massive portion of its military strength. Missing figures: Emperor Mikar Valerian, Saint Eurasia, 2 bishops, Lord Iris of House Sunlight and his brother, the entire royal family, the claymore-bearer Melina Maiden, the current head of House Moonlight, Frost Moonlight, thousands of warriors from every noble house. The report was catastrophic, although their deaths weren't officially confirmed. Reports indicated that a strange barrier had swallowed them whole. The loss of the Empire's most powerful figures was treated as an undeniable truth. Inside the royal hall, Oliver Kahn stood beside an elderly servant as they received the news, just as the entire Empire did. This is a disaster. Having been forced to stay behind, Oliver Kahn could now fully grasp the weight of the calamity that had struck them. As for the citizens of the Empire, widespread panic broke out once the truth could no longer be hidden by their leaders. Never in the Empire's 400-year history has there been such disgrace. What a shame. How will we ever face our ancestors now? The old servant muttered, shaking his head in bitter regret. Sir Gas. Oliver spoke the old man's name with respect. How could he not, when Gas was the longest-serving attendant in the palace and a formidable SS rank? Expressionless, Gas moved forward slowly, signaling for Oliver to follow him. What are we going to do now? This empire cannot stand without a leader. With his hands clasped behind his back, Gas led Oliver through the sprawling royal palace toward a hidden destination. The fourth emperor, Mikar Valerian, is now missing. Following closely, Oliver soon found himself in a place he had never entered before, deep within the heart of the imperial palace. The next generation cannot inherit the throne either. Prince Aegon Valerian and Princess Sansa Valerian are also missing. There were no remaining royal heirs within the palace. Standing before an enormous golden door, Gas pressed his hands against it and pushed with all his might. As the doors creaked open, he spoke. "It's time for the old era to return." Once the massive golden doors opened, Oliver was stunned by what lay within. An enormous library, its floors draped in rich crimson carpets and walls glimmering with noble gold. Gas stepped inside and knelt. Oliver followed, dropping to his knees under the crushing weight of a terrifying aura that filled the chamber. "This aura," Oliver gasped as Gas began to speak. "This humble servant, Gascoigne, offers his sincerest apologies." His words were directed at the man seated above them, holding a book in his hands, his golden eyes burning with a light so fierce it threatened to consume them. "I beg you, return, and save your people once more." As those words echoed through the chamber, the old man rose, stepping into the light, finally allowing Oliver to see him clearly. The third emperor, Sir Alone Valerian. In that moment, fury and disdain twisted Sir Alone's face, shaking the chamber with a violent tremor. This was Oliver's first encounter with the former emperor, the father of Mikar Valerian, and the grandson of the first hero, Khazes Valerian. Sir Alone had returned. Chapter 350. Sir Alone. Sir Alone Valerian. The man once known as the Iron Emperor, who had abdicated the throne in favor of his eldest son Mikar, had re-emerged after years of seclusion from the world. With a deep voice, Sir Alone finally spoke, despite having remained silent and alone for countless years. "My son, Mikar, is he dead?" Though his words were cold and devoid of emotion, the overwhelming pressure of his aura froze both Oliver and the servant, Gas, in place. Sir Alone Valerian, the third emperor, had long forgotten how to restrain himself. After spending decades isolated from the world, his reintroduction to human interaction was anything but gentle. It was Gas who answered the emperor's question. "We're not certain, my lord, but it's highly likely he's still alive." It made little sense that such a vast group, including so many powerful names, would perish altogether. The more logical assumption was that something had befallen them, but they yet lived. Alone narrowed his golden eyes upon hearing that. "So you're telling me that my foolish son not only lost, but dared to stay alive afterward?" Neither Gas nor Oliver could respond. The pressure continued to intensify with each word. Alone descended toward them, leaning on a wooden cane, wearing only black trousers and an open white shirt, his long white hair draped over his broad shoulders and back. His golden eyes blazed like lanterns, and his expression was harsh. No amount of facial hair or aged wrinkles could soften it. 187 years. His voice seethed with anger as he advanced, his aura expanding with each step. 187 damned years I stood atop this empire. I spilled blood and reaped souls until skulls formed mountains and rivers ran red. I slew enemies. I slaughtered innocents. I killed my own father. I killed my brothers. I forged laws, raised this empire from a dump into a civilization that lasted over a century. With a roar, the library's windows shattered. Books tumbled from shelves as the building groaned beneath his fury. I gave this empire everything I had, until my blood dried and my sword cracked. And in the end, I laid it all down, leaving it to others. And now, you dare come before me again? For what? Under the crushing pressure of the man once known as the Iron Emperor, the floor fractured, and both Oliver and Gas collapsed. Oliver, in particular, was stunned by the sheer destructive force weighing him down. He had heard stories of the Iron Emperor, but now he understood the truth firsthand. This old man, his aura surpasses even Mikar's. While Oliver reeled from the realization, Gas lowered his head, unable to meet Alone's burning gaze.
I'm sorry.
Truly sorry, my lord. I apologize for my failure, for daring to drag you back into this hell. The old servant spoke with sincerity. Having served during the Iron Emperor's reign, he had witnessed it all. Sir Alone Valerian had lived through a bloody age where brothers murdered each other for power after the death of Emperor Casus Valerian. Casus had left behind many children, hoping to build a long-lasting royal bloodline to lead humanity. But instead, his legacy turned into a blood-soaked dynasty where brother betrayed brother, and sons slaughtered fathers for the throne. Alone had learned all this far too young. His own siblings had tried to kill him, but the Iron Emperor ended the madness. He possessed the resolve to end the life of his tyrant father and his power-hungry siblings. He reformed the Valerian bloodline and established the Golden System, unifying the empire under one ruling power. He subjugated the three great houses, made them loyal to him, and boxed in the church between his fingers, rendering it impotent. He built walls and cities. He created a civilization strong enough to stand as humanity's last bastion when they once teetered on extinction. With iron resolve, he ruled mercilessly. He forged laws and judged with blood and steel. During the Iron Emperor's reign, the Ultras never dared breach the empire. Not even once. They didn't even dream of it. And for nearly 2 centuries, thanks to the vitality of the SS Plus rank, which kept his body youthful, he ensured the survival of the empire. He raised his children wisely. There were no feuds among them. They stood united as one. And when the time came when the Golden System began to rust, change was due. Sir Alone passed the torch to his eldest son, casting away his sword. After a magnificent reign, he secluded himself in his private library, away from the world, flipping through his cherished books, awaiting death. But death never came. Now, the door he had shut so long ago had been opened once more. The door to hell, the one he had walked through for decades, was calling him back. I gave everything to this empire. I gave it my entire life. Sir Alone held his face in his hand, laughing bitterly, grieving a fate that had exhausted his weary soul, and a son who failed to seize the path laid out for him. I thought I had given everything, but I was wrong. Step by step, Sir Alone walked forward, passing both Oliver Kahn and Gas. Oliver, in particular, was struggling. The immense pressure bearing down on him made it difficult just to breathe. "Hey, boy!" Once he passed him, the Iron Emperor turned toward Oliver with a scornful glare. "I don't have time to teach you how to breathe in my presence. So stop wasting my time and get out of my sight." Pierced by the harshness in Sir Alone's tone, Oliver Kahn responded by unleashing his celestial aura, resisting Alone's pressure as he stood his ground once more, face to face with the Iron Emperor. "I don't know what you're talking about, sir." "Good." With a thud of his staff against the floor, Sir Alone finally stepped out of his library, for the first time in decades, followed closely by both Oliver Kahn and Gas. "There is still something I've yet to give this empire. The one thing that comes only once. The final gift he would offer to this land that had chained him down and refused to let him go. Death. It would be his death on the battlefield he had long turned his back on, that would bring his bitter struggle to an end. My son ushered in an age of weakness and ruin, destroying everything I built." Sir Alone continued his lament as Gas, the loyal servant, carefully summarized the current state of the empire. "But now I've returned, and the Golden Order will rise again, taking the throne once more. A new era of the Golden Order had begun within the empire." Chapter 351. The Forgotten Rank. The Tea Party. In the witch's splendid garden, Simon Manus sat, staring with curiosity at the lady before him. Beatrice's homunculus sat quietly, her head bowed, her expression utterly void of life. Simon's curious gaze turned into a smile the moment the doll moved again. Beatrice returned, exhaling a long, tired sigh. "Welcome back, my lady sorceress, or should I say, exalted high-rank demon." Simon grinned, showing his teeth, while Beatrice casually waved her hand, dismissing the formalities. Just say what you came to say. Nothing special, my demonic lady. I must admit, I didn't expect your true body to be a demon. I imagined you to be a hybrid at most. But you've surpassed even my wildest expectations. Beatrice stared at Simon Manus, who chuckled curiously. You know, you're the first creature on this earth unaffected by the truth of what I am. Affected? Why would I be? Aren't you a hollow? You're supposed to be our slave like the rest, aren't you? Nah. Simon Manus made a disgusted face and immediately denied it. When did I ever say I follow filthy, grotesque creatures like demons? My passion lies with a completely different species. More beautiful, more perfect. The puppet master, Simon Manus, openly revealed his twisted artistic desires before Beatrice, who grew more intrigued by the madman sitting before her. To speak so freely of your loyalty before a high-ranking demon, I didn't make a mistake inviting you to this tea party, Simon. Hehe. Don't get the wrong idea. Rank 17. I'm only interested in your doll, not your cursed real body. Though his words were nothing short of insulting, Beatrice didn't seem the least bit offended. I hate my real body too. Every time I'm forced to use it, I lose control over all my homunculus. They freeze completely, just like this poor one did. Controlling that many bodies simultaneously wasn't just difficult, it was supposed to be impossible. Yet Beatrice had done it. Still, if she ever engaged in battle or something similar using her real form, she would inevitably lose control over them all. You didn't do anything weird to my precious body while I was away, did you? Beatrice asked suspiciously, and Simon looked away without saying a word. You filthy bastard. Forget that nonsense, Beato. Tell me, do you still wish to continue this little witch's game of yours? Of course. Beatrice answered instantly, as if the question didn't even warrant thought, only deepening the curiosity in Simon's heart. But Beato, you have the strength to crush every intruder currently on this continent, and finding them wouldn't even be difficult for you. So I don't understand. Why not just face them and kill them with your true body, instead of playing this childish game with them? Simon had been curious about Beatrice's motives for some time now. Why would an awakened being of SS+ rank go to such lengths? For a group of weak children. At first, Simon assumed that something was preventing Beatrice's true body from acting, but she shattered that expectation the moment she revealed herself in full power as a high-ranking demon. And yet, he couldn't help but question why. The answer came from Beatrice herself. Oh, about that. With a sweet smile, the witch replied, It's a secret. I figured you'd say that, Simon sighed, shaking his head, regretting even entertaining the idea of getting a straight answer from the trick-loving witch beside him. Don't be like that. I have a goal I need to accomplish. Otherwise, I wouldn't have come all the way to this remote place called Earth. I suppose you're right. Beatrice nodded. Also, if I were to go there with my true body, my intuition tells me something terrible would happen. Manus raised an eyebrow at her words. And how exactly would that happen? I don't know, but I suspect it has something to do with that strange boy I mentioned last time. Ah? Something Starlight, was it? Fry Starlight. Yes, he's unique. With powers that defy logic, things she had only seen among the top 10 upper demons, or perhaps a few of the higher ones. Fry had displayed abilities no human should possess. Using her sharp intellect, Beatrice came to a troubling realization. Nothing she saw could be explained logically. There was only one conclusion that could make it all make sense. There's a hidden force behind him. Someone, or perhaps more than one. Fry Starlight was hiding countless secrets. And Beatrice, ever greedy, wanted to uncover them all. I really look forward to it. The next witch's game. In that moment and in that place, everything had already been decided, and Fry and his companions were destined to continue stumbling through the hellish game the witch had prepared for them. Stormvale District, a region like a fortress built amidst the desert. Stormvale was constantly struck by storms and sand whirlwinds, and yet, it stood tall, unyielding, against everything that came crashing into its massive walls. Stormvale was unlike any of the other lower bloodlands. Its sheer size rivaled that of the Empire's great cities, and its population was just as vast. The streets were never empty. Of course, no matter how large a city grew, the nature of the bloodlands never changed. Even with its relatively better conditions, Stormvale was plagued by the same horrors: cannibalism, evil, murder, bloodshed, openly on the streets. If you ventured deeper into the city, you'd find alleys crawling with its most desperate and deranged. People sleeping on the streets, fighting each other daily without pause. Among them sat a lone, cloaked youth, dressed entirely in black, with only a sliver of white hair peeking out from beneath his hood. Though he sat alone, none of the ultras dared come near him, not after he'd beaten a dozen of them senseless the previous days. He even killed a few with his bare hands. The black-cloaked figure remained still for most of the time, staring into nothingness and mumbling incomprehensible words under his breath. Then, after a long stillness, he finally moved. So, Mikar lost this time. After using third-person POV for quite a while to monitor his sister, Ada, Fry stood up from his spot, having learned the outcome of the battle between the Empire and the Ultras in the Bay of Sheskler. After that defeat, many names had gone missing, besides Fry and his scattered companions. Fry realized he could no longer expect any backup. But what puzzled him most were the battle's developments, especially its ending, and the sudden appearance of another high-ranking demon. Rank 17, Beatrice. Fry questioned aloud. Was that a coincidence? The same which he had personally killed, and now this demoness who called herself Witch Beatrice. Of course not. There are no such coincidences in this world. He didn't know how. But he was sure there was a connection between them, and that only deepened his fear. A wicked witch capable of manipulating an entire empire, and now she's watching us. Regret consumed him as he realized he had revealed all his trump cards to her. He had made a terrible mistake. If she comes back, the same tricks won't work again. Fry cursed under his breath as he walked away. Just who is the witch named Beatrice? The only high-ranking demon that should exist on Earth in this timeline was supposed to be rank 19, Astaroth. And yet, there she was, Beatrice destroying everything. From the very beginning, he hadn't even known she existed. Even though he had written the story himself, along with all 72 high-ranking demons, he had only planned to use a handful of them in the actual plot. Rank 17 wasn't one of them, which meant he wasn't even familiar with her name, because he had never created it in the first place. I need to find the others. Quickly. Hidden from sight, Fry Starlight moved once. 1 full week had passed since they'd been separated. The real game was about to begin. Chapter 352. Darker Than Black 1. What separates life from death? What distinguishes a human from a beast? In truth, the differences are clear and well known. But when it comes to a cursed land ruled by the law of the jungle, where a chosen few are favored while the rest are left to rot in hell, none of that matters. Here in the continent of the Ultras, the law of the jungle reigns supreme. Brutal battles to the death are the norm, and only the strong survive. Don't stop. We don't have time to fight. Let me rip them apart, damn it. Surrounded by a large group of enemies, 2 men charged forward, breaking through anything in their path as the chase grew more intense. Danzo led the way, clad in his full-body silver armor, punching through building walls one after another with sheer force, followed closely by Ragna, wielding a massive spear nearly his own size. On the other end, the Ultras had been relentlessly attacking them for days. Come at me, you bastards! Winds surged violently around Ragna's spear as he unleashed slash after slash, slicing through the pursuers and painting the ground with their filthy blood. Though he had cut down many, more and more kept coming ever since he and Danzo fell into the trap set in this desolate Ultra city. Ragna insisted on fighting, but Danzo dragged him along by force, refusing to let him stop. I told you not to stop running, you idiot. Let's finish them off. That's exactly what they want, fool. As the siege closed in, Danzo unleashed his aura, swelling his muscles to the limit. Explosive power surged through his silver dragon armor. Light maneuver, sky-shattering fist. He struck the solid ground of the city with devastating force, enhanced by his dragon armor, causing a massive explosion. The impact triggered a quake felt throughout the city, leveling houses and burying the ultras who had surrounded them. Using the smoke and dust as cover, Danzo and Ragna vanished, leaving the ultras circling a giant empty crater. It didn't take long before they started screaming in rage, realizing their prey had escaped. A chaotic uproar broke out. Some even began attacking each other. Find them! Search everywhere! The ultras scattered like rabid dogs, desperate to reclaim their fleeing prey. But the prey hadn't gone far. In fact, Danzo had immediately dashed into one of the buildings, hiding inside with Ragna, right beneath the noses of their pursuers. Now safely tucked inside the basement of the old structure, the moment the danger passed, Danzo punched Ragna straight into a wall, fury blazing in his eyes. What the hell is wrong with you? Fight? Wipe them out? Who the hell do you think you are? Grabbing Ragna by the collar and lifting him, Danzo seethed at the first companion he'd found since the chaotic teleportation. Ragna was equally furious. You want to run? Then run by yourself. He broke free from Danzo's grip, yelling recklessly despite the risk of being discovered. Didn't you hear what those bastards said? Are you pretending to be deaf now? Tell me, Danzo. Danzo stayed silent as Ragna continued. It was Lawrence, Danzo. That bastard Lawrence is their leader. That's the name of the man who killed my father. Danzo instantly remembered the Imperial raid on the Ultras, the day Isaac Cloud, Ragna's father, was killed. Later, they had been told it was a monster named Lawrence behind it all, a name he now heard again from their pursuers' mouths. Since that moment, Ragna had gone completely insane. But unlike him, Danzo remained rational. So, what are you planning to do? Kill the son of a bitch, of course. And how exactly will you do that? Danzo asked coldly. In response, Ragna stabbed his massive spear deep into the ground, sending out a raging windstorm that shook the room. I have my father's spear, Wynnyd, the Spear of Storms. I'll kill that damn bastard with it. One of the 5 legendary spears, Wynnyd, ranked S+, left to him by his father. Ragna was consumed by vengeance, but Danzo grabbed him by the back of the head and forced him to face him eye to eye. Listen to me. Suppressing his raging friend with force, Danzo spoke impatiently. Who do you think fought that Lawrence bastard on the day of the raid? My father. And your father. My dad. Wearing this cursed silver dragon armor. And your dad. Wielding that damn storm spear you keep bragging about. 2 fully armed S+ rank warriors couldn't take him down. What do you hope to achieve with your pathetic strength? Danzo couldn't stop himself from punching Ragna as he shouted. Revenge is fine, hell. It's the best. But what you're planning isn't revenge. It's suicide, you damned bastard. Panting heavily, Danzo tried to stop Ragna from making a reckless move. He understood. If his own father had died that day instead of Ragna's, perhaps he wouldn't have been able to hold himself together either. But still, he had to stop him. Get a grip, man. Is this what your father would have wanted? For you to die foolishly after him. And what the hell would you know? Boom! Danzo punched Ragna again, grabbing him tightly. What I know is that you'll die if you go. And since I'm here, I won't let that happen. Even if I have to beat you senseless and drag your unconscious body with me. So either you stop this madness, or I'll bury you here and now. In response to Danzo's threat, Ragna clenched the storm spear, Wynnyd, his jaw tight, glaring furiously at Danzo, who stared back with a dead serious expression. But the clash never happened. Ragna loosened his grip. Danzo let go of him. Defeated and frustrated, Ragna sank to the ground, lowering his head. What am I supposed to do, Danzo? My father's killer. He's so close, closer than ever before. I might never get this chance again. All of this, every twist and turn, had been an accident. If not for that trap, their feet would never have stepped on this cursed continent. But the world has a way of becoming small. And now, Ragna stood within reach of the man who stole his father away. What am I supposed to do now? He kept asking, until Danzo answered. Live, Ragna. Live. Removing the silver dragon armor, Danzo sat down in front of his friend. I'm sure that's what your father would have wanted. Live, grow stronger, and then seek your revenge again, on your own terms. That was the last exchange between them. They fell into silence, lost in their thoughts. Both stayed hidden, waiting for the danger to pass before they moved again. 10 days into the continent of Ultras, it hadn't been long, but it was enough time for a lot to happen, especially when the elite class's supplies had run out at a terrifying pace. They weren't all monsters with strange bodies that didn't hunger or tire. Humans had their limits, and some were already breaking. But those two were definite exceptions. Hey, found anything? Demon Valerian asked as he searched one of the Ultra's administrative buildings he'd stumbled upon. Stop asking and focus. I really need to do something about that tone of yours. Ghost was also searching, scanning the entire place while ignoring the piles of corpses around them. After reuniting, the two had formed an unlikely team, breaking into this place in hopes of finding something, anything, that could help them return home. But the results were disappointing. Nothing useful. It's all about cursed blood transfusions and experiments I don't understand. Demon cursed, kicking a metal cabinet and sending it flying. We'll have to move. Ghost had found nothing either. You mean look for the others? Ghost nodded. Right? Honestly, most of those idiots are dead weight that'll only slow me down. Ghost Umbra, are you really sure you want to go looking for them? Demon walked calmly toward Ghost, studying him. Aren't you an assassin? I thought assassins worked alone. He didn't mind having Ghost on his team. He was strong, useful, reliable. But the same couldn't be said for the rest. If it were up to Demon, he'd form a squad with only those he deemed worthy, and leave the trash behind. But even he wasn't crazy enough to do something like that openly. Hoping Ghost shared the same mindset, he was caught off guard when the silent killer suddenly raised his arm, revealing a glowing tattoo, the same one the witch Selena had marked him with. One of our comrades is nearby. Let's go find them. Ignoring Demon's words entirely, Ghost focused on his priority, giving no regard to anything else, especially now that Selena's mark was glowing again, the very same mark she used on them during the teleportation. Once they were warped, the mark acted like a radar, glowing brighter as elite class members drew closer to one another. That was how Ragna met Danzo before, and now how Ghost had met Demon. The latter side in defeat, having long given up trying to change Ghost's mind. Whatever you want. Chapter 353, Darker Than Black, 2. Quietly, both Ghost and Demon exited the building. Night had fallen. The streets were completely deserted, eerily so. But the eerie silence didn't faze the duo at all. Ghost lifted his gaze toward the moon that lit the sky, the same moon seen from all corners of this world. He found himself wondering about the others. You said assassins work alone, Demon Valerian. Ghost's voice broke the silence, and Demon halted, staring at him with a blank expression. So what? You're wrong. Assassins never truly fight alone. Ghost kept walking, voicing thoughts he rarely shared aloud. An assassin always assesses the situation and chooses the most logical path, the one that offers the best chance of survival. The simple truth is, I saw no advantage in staying alone with you, Demon Valerian. Demon didn't say anything. He knew Ghost was right. But no need to worry. The purge you want might just happen on its own. Demon was momentarily surprised by how accurately Ghost had read him. What Demon truly desired was a team made up only of the strong. No deadweight, no burdens. And it seemed that team would assemble itself naturally, just as Ghost implied. The continent of Ultras would ensure it. One way or another. With a crooked grin, Demon expressed his admiration. I wonder how you can speak your mind so easily. Ghost Umbra. But Ghost didn't really care. The number of people he wanted to save in this world was small, painfully so. Especially for someone like him who had grown used to burying his comrades. Nothing really moved the assassin anymore. Far from the rebellious duo of Ghost and Demon, a lone girl wandered the alleys of the Ultras, hiding herself as best she could. From time to time, her body would glow faintly with a soothing green aura, healing her fatigued body little by little. This was how the saint candidate Emilia Adorix had survived these past few days. With no food or water left, she had no choice but to resort to this method to stay alive. Especially here in the barren lands of the Ultras, no animals to hunt, no crops to harvest, not even water to drink. The only meat that sustained these people was human flesh, and their only wine was filthy demon blood. Emilia was already nearing her limit. Alone, scared to even move in search of her comrades, she had hidden away. Lord, grant me strength to overcome this trial. She prayed with all her heart, hoping her God would show her a path, or that one of her companions might find her. Anyone would do. Anything but this crushing, maddening solitude that left her unable to even sleep. The young girl suffered in silence. Even her holy power had nearly run dry. But just as she finished her prayer, she heard it, a child's cry in the distance, the sound of a small boy weeping. Emilia hesitated for a moment, afraid to leave her hiding place, but she gathered her courage when the crying didn't stop. This must be a sign from the Lord. Believing it to be an answer to her prayer, she followed the sound immediately. She moved through alley after alley until she reached a dark corner. There, a child, no older than 5, sat sobbing uncontrollably. Emilia covered her mouth in horror as she saw the boy's arms had been severed, his body tied to a chair and left to bleed out. She rushed to him, pouring what little holy power she had left into his body, desperately trying to heal him. Hold on. But no matter how hard she tried, her power was too weak. His wounds didn't close. The boy's crying only grew louder. Lord, what should I do? Emilia was at a loss, searching for anything, to help the boy. Then, as she turned around, she froze. Right in front of her, just inches away, stood a man. His eyelids dry and crusted, his skin peeling to the bone, staring at her with grotesque curiosity. A twisted smile stretched across his face the moment he saw Emilia's features. I knew it! He shrieked, mad with joy, as he yanked back her black cloak, revealing her green hair and the face she'd tried so hard to hide. I knew you'd come, the deranged man screamed, reaching out with a trembling hand. But Emilia, frozen in terror, released a burst of holy energy, blasting him back. And yet, it didn't harm him at all. Stay away! From her frail hands, Emilia unleashed another beam of holy power, shattering the terrifying man's body with force. But not enough to kill him. Damn you! I cut off my son's hands just for you. Why are you acting like this? The man screamed in madness, and Emilia's fear only grew, along with the certainty that she had no choice but to kill him. But she had never been a fighter to begin with. Her strength had faded, worn down by days of hunger and exhaustion. Then out of nowhere, a second man appeared, then a third, a fourth, crawling in from the edges of the narrow alley, between the boy who had cried until his tears and blood ran dry, and the men whose skin was blistered and clung tight to their bones. Emilia resisted, summoning a barrier to keep them at bay. Those men, more demon than human, threw themselves at the barrier with mindless ferocity, drooling as they stared at her. They pounded against it until their arms and legs bled. Tongues out, eyes glowing red, Emilia watched her barrier begin to crack. My God! The fissures spread, one after another. My God! Tears streamed down her face as her body trembled involuntarily at the sight of those creatures battering her last line of defense. Now, there were dozens of them. Then, without warning, Emilia fell to the ground, struck by the one soul she hadn't seen as an enemy. The child, the boy with severed hands, leapt onto her and bit down on her left shoulder with animalistic force, sinking his teeth deep into her flesh. Emilia, who had always fought from a distance, far from pain, far from suffering, was not used to feelings like this. So, all she could do was scream in agony, forgetting the barrier that had protected her until now. And just like fragile glass, the shield shattered. The monsters surged in. Like beasts, they swarmed over Emilia's fallen body, tearing off her clothes in an instant, pinning her down with brutal force, snapping the bones in her arms and legs, refusing to let her escape. When the wave of blinding pain hit her, pain unlike anything she had ever known, Emilia had no choice but to scream until her voice broke. From every direction, the men piled onto her like rabid animals, even fighting each other in their frenzy to get to her. And finally, the Saintess candidate felt a searing, unbearable pain from below, unable to comprehend that she had already been violated. In that moment, a single phrase echoed through her broken mind. If given the chance, they will attack your corpses one by one. With her body shattered and monsters constantly attacking her, Emilia, who could no longer scream or cry, found herself asking, after endless hours, "Why is this happening to me?" She had been obedient, devout, faithful. She had done everything right, lived a righteous life. The bishop once said, "The faithful would never suffer." So why? Why was this her end? Her holy power didn't save her. No one came. In that dark alley, she was violated again and again until she died in that cursed corner of the world. And as expected, those monsters continued to do what they started, even knowing their prey was dead, lusting after her body and dragging along every sense of life and morality. In a shadowed corner of this damned land, another tormented soul fell. Chapter 354. A different kind of human. Upper Bloodlands, Caelid. Here, in the heart of the continent, at its very core, under a sky stained crimson by the slowly setting sun, a bizarre and inexplicable sight stood. A city built as the capital of this cursed land. Deserts and barren wastelands surrounded it from every side, sealing it off completely. Yet the moment one neared Caelid, the desolation would inexplicably transform into verdant, vibrant terrain, so alive that even the air felt different. Between life and death, there existed a thin, invisible barrier, an unseen line that separated the upper bloodlands from the filth beyond. There was no comparison between the chaotic cities where the elite class wandered and this flourishing capital known as Caelid. The city stood tall with skyscrapers and advanced structures, brimming with vitality and elegance. Its people looked like nobles from the Victorian era, strolling with grace through the clean streets built just for them. This was Caelid, home of the upper blood. Those rare humans who had managed to assimilate demonic blood and were chosen to leave the forsaken hell they were born into. It was terrifying. How a minority came to possess everything millions outside that barrier could only dream of. In a secluded corner of Caelid stood a large, dark fortress no one dared approach. It looked like a relic from the medieval era. This was the residence of the oldest among the current lords of the Ultras, Gavid Linman. He stood now behind a fragile glass window, staring at the strange phenomenon occurring on the other side. The room he was in was the most secure chamber in the entire fortress, forged from an incredibly tough gray metal, and yet, that metal was melting, dissolving at a terrifying rate under the effect of the black flames that engulfed the space. Those flames were erupting from the body of a single young man, barely 18 years old, a youth who could no longer even scream. He simply sat collapsed, slowly devoured by the dark fire consuming him from within. His moonlight sword lay beside him, dropped when its wielder could no longer hold on. In that moment, the masked figure known as V looked utterly hollow, surrendering to everything as the fire crawled over his skin. He didn't even register Gavid as the man shattered the glass and tore through the wall, striding into the blaze. V lifted his head, staring at the approaching lord. His red eyes were lifeless. The black flames surged at Gavid immediately, but he didn't stop. He walked through them, ignoring his burning body. For those flames were no ordinary fire. Gavid didn't hesitate. As soon as he reached V, he launched a thunderous punch into the boy's face, sending him stumbling deeper into the sea of fire his own body had birthed. "What do you think you're doing, Vinny?" Gripping his Empyrean tightly, enduring the searing heat, Gavid shouted with a voice laced with aura. "Is that it? Is that all you've got to offer?" He returned the moonlight sword to V slowly. "We are humans rejected by this world. We've borne the sins of our fathers, and their fathers before them. Born into this dark continent, we've lived every second between life and death. With filthy blood in our veins, we belong neither to the humans who built their empire and cast us aside, nor to the demons who treated us as experiments and enslaved us." He grabbed V's face. Even as his hand burned to a crisp, he refused to let go. "So what are we, then? Just slaves, living and dying according to the whims of beings that despise our very existence." As he poured his beliefs into him, Gavid's body erupted with a powerful aura that repelled the flames, forcing them back, his grip on V tightening. "Astaroth is not our king, not our ruler. A filthy demon won't decide our fate. We will. The Empire is no better than us. They are not more human than we are. They won't rule us. They won't decide for us. We will." Gavid's words reached V. Something lit up again in his crimson eyes. With difficulty, the tortured youth muttered faintly, "My lord, Lord Lindman. Fight it. Make it yours." Gavid roared louder, but V trembled. I can't. He's too strong." He wept. He could no longer suppress the fire. "I can't do what you and Lord Dragoth did. Look at me. Vinny of Sparta." Obeying, V stared at Gavid once more, whose eyes had turned completely black as he pushed his power to its absolute limits. "You're the first to receive a contract like this, an SSS-ranked pact. The power of Marvas, the fifth highest demon, a being said to wield flames hot enough to burn the sun itself. We've served long, waited longer. What you'll see and endure will make you want to throw your life away. But remember this, you are the master of your own fate. This power that's killing you, the fire burning your soul, eating you from the inside out, it will become yours. Bow your head if you must, hide your strength if you need to, endure everything, but never let anyone else decide your fate. Don't lose yourself. V." Placing the moonlight sword in his hands, Gavid Lindman slowly stepped back, unable to resist the searing flames any longer. As for V, with a long exhale, he summoned the aura of the moonlight sword, an aura that devoured all others, and began containing the inferno his body had produced. The masked figure managed to gather his will to fight once more, even inside the black hell that was consuming him. "We were born here, on the continent of the Ultras, fated to bear the sins of our ancestors and live in a world that cornered us from every side. Only the Ultras can understand the Ultras. No one else ever will." In the heart of that despair, each of them lived their lives in their own way. Chapter 355, The Gathering. 10 days since the elite class was scattered, after countless hours wandering alone, following the glowing mark of the witch Selena on their hands, the only clue they had left. The elite students fumbled their way through obstacle after obstacle, desperately searching for one another. Phoenix Sunlight was by far the most active, running like a madman in every direction, determined to find the others. His desperate struggle led him to a few of them, but not all. Now, gathered inside a primitive Ultras tent they had stormed earlier, Phoenix sat in the center, staring at the faces around him. Closest to him, of course, were his two cousins, Scarite and Ivan Sunlight, the twins he was lucky enough to find first, thanks to their proximity after teleportation. The next ones he'd found were another pair, the church's golden boy, who looked grim and silent, and the granddaughter of the former headmaster, Lara Croft. Lara hadn't stopped looking at Snow since he appeared. Just when she was struggling to survive, he had shown up, while casually annihilating an Ultras camp she had taken refuge in. From how wildly Snow had been running around, it was obvious he was searching for something. But the cold reaction he gave her made it clear. He wasn't looking for his friends. His goal was something else entirely, something he refused to explain. Not far from them were three more figures: Demon, Ghost, and Dawn Polaris, whom they had found while exploring the surrounding area. The strange thing about Dawn wasn't just that he had survived on his own, but that he had found food in the middle of that chain of deserts, without a scratch or any real hardship. When asked how he did it, his answer was vague. "I was born with a useless talent that finally proved useful." With a sorrowful smile, Dawn Polaris mentioned the odd gift he'd carried since birth. It was more of a power than a talent, something the others never even believed could be real. Asterisk the last survivor. No matter where he goes, no matter who his enemies are, the last survivor will be the one who lives to tell the tale of the dead. Asterisk. Alongside his weapon talent, Dawn had been born with this strange ability, one that somehow always let him survive no matter the situation. Like a plot armor. Even he couldn't believe it, but recent events had started to prove otherwise, and that's what made Dawn wonder, am I really supposed to be happy with a power like this? To survive while everyone else around you dies. Perhaps that was a fate worse than death. With such grim thoughts, Dawn isolated himself from the rest. Nearby, Danzo and Ragna had also survived, having successfully escaped the ambush they'd been caught in. Phoenix continued counting the survivors, eventually arriving at the last group of girls he had found: Ceres Moonlight, Sansa Valerian, and Adriana Highthorn. Found together, with Ceres and Sansa being the first to meet, and Adriana joining them later. And finally, Selena, the witch, appeared out of nowhere the moment they were all gathered. She had been the one who placed the magical marks on them in the first place, so she had hidden herself carefully until they were all in one spot. Once enough of her aura had gathered in a single location, she teleported to them effortlessly. Not long after Selena, Prince Aegon Valerian arrived as well, alone and unharmed, completing the list. Phoenix, his expression darkened, finally spoke. "Only 14 people?" A sharp pain pulsed in his head at the thought that more than 5 students had likely already perished. And then came Selena's words, the ones that crushed all remaining hope. "I marked every single one of you. The magical mark doesn't disappear unless under very rare conditions. Most notably, the death of the person it's attached to." After a pause, with all eyes turning to her, Selena declared, "I can feel every living bearer of the mark. Right now, only 16 of them remain on this continent. 14 were present. Phoenix was the 15th. Which meant everyone slowly began to understand. Of those not here, only one is still alive." With that final line, Selena shattered any remaining hope that the rest of the students had survived teleportation. Somewhere across the continent of the Ultras, they had all died alone. All of them, except one. News like this only made the mood among the elite students grow darker and darker. The death of their comrades had become a bitter pattern. And this time, they wouldn't even have the chance to bury them properly. That's if there were bodies left at all. "Selena, can you teleport to the last student's location?" Phoenix asked, his face weary. Selena shook her head. "I'm afraid not. The condition for my teleportation spell is that a significant amount of my aura must already be present at the location I want to travel to. That condition was barely met when all of you gathered here." "I see. But you can at least pinpoint where he is, right?" This time, Selena hesitated even more before responding. "That's not possible. The mark only reacts to the location with the largest and nearest cluster of signatures. So, only he can find us. Is that what you're saying?" "Yes. I'm truly sorry. It's all right. You've done your part." Phoenix placed a hand on Selena's head, forcing a faint smile. "The responsibility for everything that's happened falls on me." Even if he had no choice, given the situation they were thrown into, it didn't change the fact that he was the strongest among them, and their teacher. "I'll find the last survivor myself. Everyone else stays here. There's no point, Professor Phoenix. This is an entire continent, remember? How are you going to find him? Aegon was the one to speak this time, the only person who could challenge Phoenix openly. The last student will be trying to reach us, since he can feel our presence. All I have to do is sweep the surrounding area until I find him. Who knows? Maybe I'll get there in time to save him. Now that so many students had already died, Phoenix was desperate to save whoever was left, by any means necessary. There's no need to go, Professor Phoenix. The last survivor is already known. It was Demon Valyrian who stepped forward. It's Fry Starlight, without a doubt. Phoenix said nothing, because deep down, he believed the same. Demon's right, Snow added, breaking his silence at last. I know what Fry is capable of. If he unleashes everything he has, there aren't many ultras who can actually kill him. Snow's voice was steady, confident. He'll reach this place sooner or later. So instead of wasting energy searching for him, I suggest we stay here, while the strongest among us heads out to investigate the portals. Naturally, Snow had nominated himself. He had no intention of staying idle in one place. Phoenix, however, saw right through him. Sorry, but I can't risk losing another student. Everyone stays here. If anyone's leaving, it's me. Snow's hand moved to his sword. He could no longer hide his frustration. He was seriously considering forcing his way through. He took his first step, but Lara Croft, who had clung to his arm, stopped him. Don't, Snow. Having lived with him for so long, ever since her grandfather adopted him, Lara could easily anticipate his actions. But this time, Snow wasn't in the mood for her. With a swift motion, he flung her aside effortlessly. I don't have time to waste here. Somewhere on this cursed land was someone he had searched for, longed to find, and desperately wanted to kill. Now, at long last, he had a lead. He couldn't let this opportunity slip away. He knew he was strong enough. And here, deep in enemy territory, Snow didn't mind unleashing the full wrath of the War King form without restraint. Even if it consumed him in an endless thirst for blood, as long as it meant killing his enemies, he would be satisfied. With defiant resolve, Snow took his first real step, intending to break away and go off on his own. Chapter 356. The Last Survivor. Void St. Before he could activate his skill, he was immediately stopped by two figures appearing at the exact same moment. There's no point in what you're trying to do, Snow Lionheart. I'm getting real tired of babysitting you suicidal bastards. Can't any of you just sit still for once? Ghost stood directly in front of him. Danzo had appeared behind, wrapping him in a physical lock with his overwhelming strength. Snow found himself completely trapped. Let me go. Not happening. Danzo smirked, tightening his grip. I can hold the skinny body of yours all day long. I don't want to hurt you both. Snow spoke coldly as his body began to emit more and more aura. Ghost and Danzo both knew just how strong the Church's champion could be. But neither of them backed down. That's enough, Snow Lionheart. A hand landed on Snow's shoulder, appearing out of thin air. Phoenix had stepped in to end the battle before it began. Go ahead, try. But tell me, Church Hero, do you really think you can overpower everyone here on your own? Now, face to face with Phoenix, Snow stood frozen in place as conflicting thoughts clashed within his mind. Set your priorities straight, Snow Lionheart. Don't make a decision you'll regret for the rest of your life. He said nothing, but slowly withdrew his aura. At last, he yielded, forcing Danzo to release him. A choice I won't regret. Sitting down quietly, unmoving, Snow couldn't help but question whether any of the options before him were truly the right one. Deep within his heart, he felt that no matter what he chose, regret would follow. For in a land like this, there was no such thing as a right or wrong answer. Not when they were lost in a hostile continent, with no clue how to return home. But that was about to change. Just as the tension finally began to ease and silence fell once more, Ceres Moonlight stepped forward, holding a strange-looking object in her hands. "About the portals and a way home," she said. "I think we may have found something useful." Together with Sansa and Adriana, Cerys presented the artifact they discovered when they were first teleported here. Phoenix took the object, which resembled a metallic orb, and examined it curiously. "Is this what I think it is?" "A magic map," Selena spoke up immediately upon seeing it. These kinds of artifacts often contain miniature constructs, used to identify places and chart locations. "Can you activate it?" Phoenix asked. Selena nodded eagerly. "I can. It only needs a little magic to work." Infusing her aura into the orb, Selena unlocked the intricate magical seals. The orb reacted instantly, glowing softly as a series of light circles emerged and stabilized. A massive three-dimensional projection burst forth into the air above them. A living map, fully rendered in vibrant detail. Every elite student present stared up in awe, the full expanse of the Ultra's continent now reflected in their eyes. The entire continent, it's all here. The map was incredibly detailed, showing even cities and landmarks. But Selena's focus narrowed on one particular feature. White spires scattered across the map in key locations. Teleportation gates. Their only path out of this hellish land now stood clear. There were many gates, but most of them were located deep within major cities. Cities of the high blood, naturally. What caught Selena's attention, however, was one gate near their current location. An ancient portal, hidden within an isolated mountain region. "We can escape," Selena muttered without realizing, a glimmer of hope spreading across the weary faces of the elite students. "If we can reach that gate, I can bring us back home." She pointed to the portal, which was roughly 100 kilometers away, buried in the mountains. Finally, the students had a clear direction instead of aimless wandering. "Well done, Cerys Moonlight. But how exactly did you find this artifact?" Phoenix asked, not fully convinced it was mere luck. "Credit goes to Adriana. She discovered it before we met." Cerys gestured toward Adriana, who shrank in place as all eyes turned to her. It was just luck," Adriana mumbled nervously, but Phoenix shook his head. "Be proud of yourself, Adriana. That luck may have just saved all of us." He then turned back toward Selena, who was still analyzing the map. "What's the likelihood this map is fake?"
Impossible, Selena replied.
"There's a magical signature embedded in the artifact. It was created long ago. There's no way it's a forgery." Reassured by her words, a sense of cautious optimism returned to the group. "Then let's move. We've wasted enough time already," Scarite exclaimed, unable to contain her excitement to leave this cursed place. But Sansa quickly cut her off. "Move? To where?" The princess, silent for most of the conversation, chose this moment to speak. "There's still one person who hasn't arrived. Did you forget? We're not leaving without him." Her words were firm. Scarite frowned. Fry Starlight. Everyone believed that the final survivor could only be Fry. Some weren't thrilled about staying behind just for one person, but their voices were too weak to challenge the decision. "The princess is right. We're not moving until he gets here." Phoenix's declaration left no room for argument, especially when even Prince Aegon himself said nothing in protest. And so, everyone chose to wait for Fry. But Selena, more than anyone, couldn't bring herself to say a word. She simply stared at them in silence. She was the only one who knew the truth, but recklessly speaking it aloud wasn't an option. Fry Starlight might already be dead, and he wasn't the final survivor. She had seen it with her own eyes. Fry had forcibly interrupted his own teleportation, staying behind alone, surrounded by the Ultra's army, and the witch who accompanied them. As a result, he didn't carry her mark. He had erased it himself. Fry was powerful, but not powerful enough to survive that. In other words, whoever the last marked survivor was, it wasn't Fry Starlight. That was what Selena wanted to say, but she kept it to herself until the very end. The final survivor, the one bearing the last mark, wasn't a boy, but a girl. A lone figure who found herself trapped in a region under constant attack. Clanna Starlight, the one everyone believed was waiting for rescue. With a body battered and broken, riddled with deep gashes, her once white hair now stained crimson with blood. She had burned through all 5 of her stars, draining every last drop of aura as she unleashed the full extent of her Stardust style just to survive. But no matter how many enemies she cut down, more kept coming. Her sword had lost its edge, no longer able to hold up under the relentless assault. Surrounded by yet another wave of ultras who had pursued her for days on end, Clanna had finally reached her limit. So this is the end? The endless chase had prevented her from ever reaching the others. Though the mark had pointed to their location, they were far too far away. Now, as dozens of rabid ultras reached for her, Clanna raised her sword to her neck. She had chosen to take her own life, rather than be raped by the hands of monsters. Accepting her fate, ready for death, she was prepared to die. But in the end, everyone else died instead. Collapsing in place, unable to stand. Clanna's eyes widened in disbelief at the storm of dark slashes that erupted all around her, tearing the ultras to pieces in an instant. Like a phantom, he appeared, in the center of the blood-drenched battlefield, staring down at her. "Are you all right?" Among all the elite students, he was the only one without a mark. "Fry!" And just like that, the last 2 survivors of the elite class stood reunited. Chapter 357. The High Blood 1. Fry Starlight's POV. It's been 10 days since I was separated from the elite class. The past days had been eventful. The war between the Empire and the Ultras had officially begun after the Battle of the Shiskler Bay. A battle that ended with the Empire's defeat. Left with no clue, I was forced to wander aimlessly through enemy territory in search of my classmates. During this search, I passed through many of the primitive colonies of the lower blood. I witnessed their grim reality firsthand, how their harsh environment and the lives they were forced to live had turned them into monsters wearing human skin. The Ultras continent, home to millions of humans, was nothing but a living testing ground for demons who exploited them to the fullest. Humans are an adaptive species, capable of surviving any environment they're placed in, which is why they made the perfect subjects for such horrific experiments. After living among them and slaughtering hundreds over these past days, I'd grown sick of it all. And just when I thought I'd have to continue like this for a while longer, I met her. Tlono. Holding her in my arms as I dashed across the mountains, I searched frantically for a proper shelter. Clanna Starlight's breathing was shallow, her face red with a high fever. All of it because of her injuries. A deep wound on the right side of her abdomen. I assumed she was stabbed there. Whatever pierced her had gone clean through and exited her back. There was another wound on the right side of her chest, though not as severe. On top of that, her body was covered in dozens of cuts and bruises, clear signs of continuous beating. To have survived 10 days in that condition at her current level of strength was a miracle in itself. But now that I was here, I wouldn't let her die that easily. Fry! Barely. Clanna opened her eyes from time to time, trying to speak. Don't talk. Focus on stopping the bleeding. Hold on as long as you can. Just leave me. Huff. I won't survive wounds like these. I didn't respond. I knew it was already too much for her. Maybe she was just hallucinating from the fever as her body fought off the death slowly creeping into her heart. Seeing her like this only reminded me how different we were. If it were me who had sustained these same wounds, they would have healed on their own. We're both humans, both from the same bloodline, the Starlight family. And yet we were so vastly different. I won't let you die. Not that easily. After almost an hour of high-speed movement through the mountainous terrain, I finally found the perfect hiding spot. A small cave I located thanks to my hawk eyes. Without hesitation, I entered. The Ultras won't find us here. Once I confirmed the place was safe, I gently laid Clanna on the ground and tore away parts of her clothing to expose the wounds, which had already started to rot. Stay with me. I kept her conscious for as long as I could, gathering a massive amount of aura in my left hand until it glowed with a vibrant purple light that lit up the entire cave. Unleashing my SSS rank aura without holding back, I placed my hand on Clana's abdomen, cauterizing her wound and allowing my power to flow into her body. Clana couldn't suppress her screams. She felt her entire body burn as her veins lit up with the same purple glow. Focus, Clana. I continued channeling aura into her without restraint, helping her reactivate her fighting style and reignite her 5 stars. For that to happen, she needed to stay awake, to properly circulate her aura. The process took far longer than I expected. By the time I finished, the sky outside had already darkened, and as soon as I stopped pouring my power into her, Clana lost consciousness, bleeding both sweat and blood throughout the ordeal. But at least, I'd successfully revitalized her body. She no longer lacked aura. Next, I cleaned her wounds and stitched them shut. I never studied medicine in my life. My experience came solely from watching my father treat my injuries when I was younger. So what I did could barely be considered medical aid. But I hoped it would be enough to keep her alive for now, especially since humans in this era were far more resilient than those before the concept of aura. Thankfully, her breathing slowly stabilized, and I finally let out a sigh of relief. Once I was sure she was out of danger, I covered her with the cloak I'd been using for stealth and retreated to the cave's entrance. Up here, surrounded by the mountain range and under the stars that lit the gloomy sky, everything was calm. When Clana finally woke up again, morning had arrived. It marked the start of day 11, still lost in the lands of the Ultras. Clana barely managed to lift her upper body, gripped by a sharp wave of migraine. Yet despite that, she found herself able to move again. So smoothly, in fact, that she was stunned by how well she'd recovered, which naturally led her gaze toward me. "You're finally awake. How are your wounds?" I initiated the conversation myself, hoping to ease the awkward tension that had built between us ever since I treated her. Thankfully, she responded quickly after examining her body. "I'm fine, thanks to you." Still unable to fully comprehend her recovery, Clana kept inspecting herself as if trying to confirm she wasn't dreaming. These injuries, they weren't something that could heal in a day, not even 10. "How did you do it?" "I didn't do anything special. First, I cauterized your wounds using my power, then reactivated your aura circulation. Finally, I cleaned and stitched the wounds." I explained the whole process like it was the easiest thing in the world, while Clana looked at me visibly puzzled.
Reactivating aura circulation.
"Is that even possible? Isn't that what the church does? Their so-called divine healing?" Clana opened her mouth to argue, comparing what I did to the sacred powers of the church, but she quickly closed it again. "You're incredible, Fry. I'm sorry for being such a burden. And thank you for saving my life." Her sudden words of gratitude came with a warm smile, one completely different from the playful ones she used to flash at me before. Her smile, combined with a system window popping up in front of me, made me raise an eyebrow, especially after I saw her affection points. "There's no need to thank me. Anyone else from the elite class would have done the same." I skipped past the formalities and moved on to the topic that truly mattered. "More importantly, Clana, you have Selena's mark, right?" As soon as I asked, her expression shifted in confusion. "Of course. Don't we all have it?" She lifted her right arm, revealing Selena's magical signature glowing faintly, indicating that it was still active. "Why are you asking about the mark, Fry? Don't you have one too?" I didn't know how to tell her that I had erased mine, that I never got transported with them in the first place. But given our current situation, I realized there was no point in hiding it. "I don't have a magical mark." Chapter 358. The High Blood, 2. Clana's expression slowly shifted the moment she heard that. "That's impossible. Then how? Wait, you didn't escape that city?" I nodded and she lost it. "No way. You stayed there alone against that army?" "Wait, don't tell me. You survived that?" Truth be told, I was planning to face them all on my own, but it never came to that. That army was fake. An illusion created by that witch. An illusion? Yes, just a mirage. So everything we've been through was for nothing. One revelation after another. Clanna clutched her head again as her migraine returned. That desperate teleportation, which everyone thought was the only way to survive, turned out to be meaningless. In fact, it had led to the deaths of many students. A truth I'd confirmed using the third-person POV to spy on their last meeting. Clanna didn't take it well, and just seconds later, she began coughing again, her body crying out from hunger and thirst after depleting her supplies. Seeing that, I pulled out everything I had, handing over all the food and water I'd stored so far. I gave her my full share untouched, but she refused at first. I can't accept this. What will happen to you if I take all of your rations? I don't need them, I replied instantly and pushed them closer to her. My body was unique. Surviving for a few weeks on Aura alone wasn't that difficult. Clanna couldn't argue anymore. She drank and ate with desperation. But Fry, how did you find me without a mark? After the teleportation, the witch's mark was our only clue to finding each other. The only way to locate the others. Finding you was just luck.
Pure coincidenze.
I'd been searching non-stop for 10 days, passing through multiple Ultras camps and cities, until I stumbled upon her. Just luck, huh? What about you? Why didn't you regroup with the others? Now that she was better, I started asking the questions I'd held in for days. This was the first. I tried, but I couldn't make it. Clanna sighed, frowning as she recalled the past days. What exactly happened? These cursed mountains. She pointed outside with her finger and began recounting everything. This mountain range stretches for hundreds of kilometers. It's a nightmare land in itself, filled with nightmare creatures that appear the deeper you go. I listened intently to what Clanna had to say. It was the first time I'd heard of another nightmare zone besides the ones I already knew. Crossing the mountain range is practically impossible, she said. Even if we somehow managed to survive all the nightmare creatures along the way, it would take far too long. But I did find a path that lets us bypass everything safely. There's a secure passage, an arcane corridor that allows for instant teleport from this side of the range to the other. But the problem is, that passage is a military base, an Ultra's stronghold. The moment I got near it, they were already waiting. They chased me for days. You know the rest. She supported her explanation by sketching a rough map in the dirt. She drew the jagged outline of the mountain range and a thin line through the middle that represented the passage. We'll have to find a way around it, she said flatly. Selena's mark points to the other side, but I cut her off. We're not going around the mountains. We're going straight through the front gate. Excuse me? Clanna stared at me like she'd misheard, her voice raised in disbelief, but I stood by what I said. We're going through that base, through the gate itself, even if it means tearing it down on top of them. Fry, do you hear yourself? That place is crawling with them. I know, but we don't have a choice if we want to reach the others. After all, they've already found a way back home. If we waste time trying to circumvent the mountains, we might miss that one chance entirely. So I chose the direct route. We'll go as soon as you're fully recovered. I said it with conviction. Clanna scowled automatically. The trauma of the past few days was still written all over her face, and now I was asking her to walk back into battle. But we had no choice. If anything happens, Clanna, I want you to leave the fighting to me. If you have to run, then run. I want you to always put your survival first, understood? She didn't say a word. She just nodded, hesitant and silent, especially with me standing that close. And with that, our path was set. It took Clanna another 24 hours to recover enough to move again. That night, we set out toward the passage she'd mentioned. We wore black cloaks that covered us from head to toe for disguise, especially Clanna, who I wrapped in every spare piece of clothing I had, leaving only her eyes visible. After all, even if the Ultras didn't know she was an enemy, they'd still flock to her on sight. We'll try to sneak in. If possible, I want to avoid fighting. Okay. Infiltrating the lower blood caste wasn't difficult. Their defenses were weak, and most of them were barely stronger than fodder. I was confident we could get through. It took only minutes to reach the entrance of the passage. I expected to find the same kind of weak fortifications I'd seen all across the primitive Ultras lands, but I was met with something else entirely. Nestled between the mountains stood a massive gate, fortified with magic cannons and dozens of guards stationed above. The gate opened now and then, letting some Ultras in and out. But what caught my attention wasn't the architecture or the overwhelming presence of the fortress. It was the Ultras themselves. Those auras, their vibrant expressions, the way their bodies radiated explosive strength. They were nothing like the lower-blooded cannon fodder I'd fought the past few days. I scowled. These aren't low-bloods. They were entirely different, not even comparable. These were the real strength of the Ultras, the ones who had forged demonic contracts, the ones with demon blood running through their veins. The High Bloods. I muttered unconsciously, just as Clanna stepped back in shock. That's impossible. I was here just a few days ago. There were none of them. She was visibly shaken. Realizing the full power of what now stood before her, she stumbled backward instinctively. Let's fall back. She wanted to retreat, but I grabbed her hand before she could. She turned to me, confused. We keep going. But, trust me. I tightened my grip and moved forward, pulling her along. Fry, stop. Step by step, we approached the massive gate until we came fully into view. If they wanted to, they could bombard us with the arcane cannons perched above. But they didn't, which meant they hadn't realized yet that we were enemies. As we got closer, 2 guards stationed outside moved into view. Towering men with massive swords strapped to their backs, their aura radiating with suffocating force. Fry, stop! Clanna's voice cracked, panicked, especially after sensing their S-class auras. I saw the fear in her eyes, but I didn't stop. Face to face with the High Bloods, I was ready to enter the gate. Chapter 359. Ultras Maneuvers 1. Calavan Passage. The narrow strait that split the Nightmare Mountain range in half, fortified with a powerful stronghold. The fortress itself was more than just a checkpoint. It was a full-fledged Ultra city, typically managed by the lower blood castes. But today was different. Today, the elite of the Ultras had taken control. In front of the gate stood 2 towering guards, their strength easily estimated to be S-rank or higher by Fry. Behind them were additional sentries and arcane cannons stationed atop the walls for extra protection. In other words, breaching the stronghold was an exceptionally difficult task, and even if one succeeded, it would instantly alert all Ultras in the area of an intruder. But none of that stopped Fry. Dragging the terrified Clanna behind him, he came face to face with the Sentinels, who already had their hands resting on the hilts of their massive swords. Their eyes scanned him, assessing the hooded figure who deliberately kept his face hidden. And just when they were about to strike, Fry bowed in a strange, ceremonial fashion. His right hand pressed to his heart, while his left was raised in an unfamiliar salute. Clanna blinked in surprise, puzzled by the gesture. But the guards didn't share her confusion. In fact, his actions made them hesitate. "Who are you?" Their suspicion remained, but that salute alone was enough to delay their swords. It was a gesture only used by a rare few, those from one of the 4 great high-blood cities. One of Lord Gavid Lindman's 7 swords, William of Caelid. The moment those words left Frey's mouth, he released a fraction of Balerian's aura, just enough to push his presence into S+ rank for a moment. It was all he needed to be taken seriously. Seeing their reactions, a faint smile formed beneath his hood. So they're not from Caelid. That confirmed it, they weren't from Gavid Lindman's capital. If they had been, they would have recognized he was an imposter. Still, that wasn't enough to fully convince them. So Fry played his trump card. "I'm here under Lord Lindman's orders. The mere fact that this damn gate isn't open already is reason enough for me to demand both your heads. Don't you think?" He let go of Clanna and stepped forward. The hesitation in the guards' expressions was obvious. But they still didn't grant him entry. I'm a reasonable man, as you can see, Fry continued. I know you're just doing your job, especially with enemies lurking among us. So, I suppose I should offer you some kind of guarantee, shouldn't I? In the blink of an eye, he pulled something from his robe and held it up before their eyes. Their expressions darkened instantly. Both dropped to one knee in perfect unison. We offer our deepest apologies to the High Sovereignty. Their voices rang out in sync, while Clanna stood in stunned silence. Fry, however, showed no sign of surprise. I don't need your apologies. Just open the damn gate. Yes, sir. One of the guards jumped to his feet, channeling aura into his voice as he shouted. Open the gate. The command traveled up the walls, and within seconds, the massive doors began to creak open for Fry. The guards stepped aside to let him through. Let's go. Fry called out to Clanna, who was still frozen in place, struggling to comprehend what had just happened. She quickly ran after him, afraid to fall behind. Together, they passed through the gate, just before it closed shut behind them as quickly as it had opened. Inside, they entered a city built like a fortress. The structures clung to the mountainsides, while the lower levels featured everything from the typical low-blood tents to full military installations. They quickly blended in with the crowd, which, to Clanna's growing concern, included a terrifying number of ultras from the high bloodline. Still clinging to Fry, she couldn't hold back anymore. She felt like she'd been asking endless questions lately, but how could she not, when Fry kept doing things that defied all logic? What the hell did you just do? Fry continued walking calmly, pulling out the same token he had shown the guards earlier. All I did was show them this. In his hand was a black emblem the size of a fist, etched with a blood-red demonic sigil. Clanna scowled at the sight of it. What is that? It's a token used by high-ranking members of their hierarchy. I took it off one of them after I killed her. The emblem's actual name was the Sigil of High Sovereignty. Fry had taken it from Beatrice's corpse after defeating her. It was the only item of value she had on her. Thanks to his knowledge as the story's author, he'd immediately recognized what it was. From there, all that remained was to perform the ridiculous salute he'd written long ago and sell the performance, just enough to get them through the gate. It was a gamble, he admitted. If I hadn't had the emblem, they would have made us show our faces, and we'd probably be fighting for our lives right now. Clanna's face darkened at his words. She imagined how close they'd come to disaster, especially now that they were already inside with no turning back. Everything that had happened so far made her want to dig deeper into the man named Fry Starlight. How does he know all this? When did he defeat a member of their high sovereignty? Is he really one of us? Are we even the same age? All those questions were on Clanna's mind, but she buried them deep in her heart. What am I even thinking? He saved my life. Besides, he's the son of the phenomenon Abraham Starlight. This level of power is expected from someone like him, isn't it? She exhaled quietly, steadying her emotions so as not to draw attention. I'm glad everything worked out in the end. You really thought I'd fight my way through the front gate? Don't be stupid. Even though I actually would've, if I didn't have the emblem. Fry spoke with a neutral tone, his face still hidden beneath the black mask he wore. But his words didn't reflect what he truly thought. Still, you're amazing, Fry. I'm glad I ended up stuck with you. Clanna smiled, sincerely this time, and that alone was enough to make Fry frown again, especially when another system notification popped up before his eyes. Ding. Clanna Starlight. Current affection points. 80. Threshold breached. User can now exert enhanced influence using third-person perspective on this individual. Fry wasn't pleased with what he saw. He wasn't sure when Clanna's affection level had gotten so high. But this wasn't the time or place to deal with it, so he ignored it for now. Let's find the teleportation circle and get out of here. Spending too much time among the ultras wasn't exactly a brilliant idea. Without wasting another second, he pushed forward into the heart of the pass, with Clanna trailing closely behind. It shouldn't be far now. Calavan Pass was equipped with a powerful magic circle that allowed people to teleport directly to the other side of the mountain range. It would have been perfect, If only it had been a teleportation gate rather than a mere circle. That difference alone was the reason it couldn't be used as a true escape route. Fry, something's going on up ahead. Clanna stopped, pointing toward the large crowd that had formed in front of them. Clearly, something was happening. Let's blend in. Stay close to me and don't lift your head. Remember, everyone here is high blood. Fry warned her seriously, and Clanna nodded. Clinging tightly to his arm, the two merged into the crowd, who were all cheering loudly for a group walking through the path cleared ahead of them. All hail the high sovereignty! The crowd roared in unison. Frey's expression darkened the moment he felt the overwhelming pressure slam onto his shoulders. He didn't even know where it had come from. But then, a giant man, nearly 4 meters tall, passed by them, each step echoing with terrifying weight. He wore a golden suit of armor that covered his body entirely, while his blazing red hair jutted out from the top like a crown of fire. Frey's cold, killer eyes grew even colder. Lord Godfrey of Ionia is passing. Someone shouted, intensifying the crowd's cheers and confirming what Fry had already suspected. Chapter 360. Ultra's Maneuvers. 2. Godfrey wasn't alone. His entire army followed. The Ultras, after winning the Battle of Shiskler against the Empire, had begun to shift their forces elsewhere. And the first to move was the savage lord himself, Godfrey. Fry, could that be? Clanna asked, barely able to endure the weight of the aura pressing down on her. Fry nodded. They're here for us. The Ultras were starting to take them seriously. The arrival of an army this large confirmed that something massive was about to happen. What convinced Fry even more was the direction Godfrey and his army were heading, toward the other side of the pass. The same road that led to their companions. Something's wrong. Why had Godfrey appeared here now? Had the Ultras already discovered where their group was hiding? Fry couldn't suppress the killing intent that surged within him as those thoughts filled his mind. Fry! Clanna clutched his waist tightly, but his eyes continued to glow with that dangerous violet hue. I can't risk letting him go. Fry began to walk, pushing his way to the front of the crowd, while Clanna hurried after him in a panic. His killing intent grew so sharp and focused that even the massive Ultra Lord himself stopped walking, turning his head in Frey's direction. I'll kill him here. Fry didn't know how far his current power could go if he unleashed everything. But one thing he was sure of, taking down a single lord wasn't out of the question. He was just about to summon his blades and start the massacre. But then he froze. A new presence burst through the area. A second oppressive aura, just as heavy as Godfrey's. What's wrong, Lord Godfrey? Why have you stopped? From within Godfrey's army, a new figure emerged, walking calmly from the rear. He had a body larger than any normal human, wrapped entirely in black bandages like some sort of undead creature. Crimson red eyes. Aura pressure SS rank. Gavardiol. He came to stand beside Godfrey, who didn't say a word. He simply turned back around and resumed walking at the front. As for Fry, now held firmly by Clanna at the waist, he had already withdrawn his killing intent. Another SS rank. Frozen in place. What irritated Fry the most was the man's appearance. The hulking figure, wrapped in black bandages. He'd heard of someone like this before, specifically during the temple raid, exactly 1 year ago. That man was Gavardiol, the one who killed Ghost's older brother. But there was one major difference, his power. Back then, Ellen White had said he was no stronger than S rank. Yet now, he had appeared before Fry as an SS rank monster. Fry could do nothing but grit his teeth. His opportunity to strike had completely vanished. What the hell is going on here? He didn't know much about these new lords who had suddenly emerged from nowhere. But the black horn protruding from the back of Gavardiol's head made something click. A half-demon. Fry muttered, eyes wide, as the truth began to crystallize before him. Third-generation experiments. Half-demons. The seal that had already been broken, allowing demons to enter the world again. These people were the successful results of those grotesque experiments Fry had seen in the past. It all makes sense now. Grabbing Clanna, he pulled her back, far away from Godfrey and Gavardial's aura range. Wait! Where are you going? Clanna asked in alarm, but Fry didn't respond. Lord Murgo, the old man the Empire knew nothing about despite his advanced age. Gavardial's leap in strength to SS rank in just 1 year. The explanation was simple. It's just like what happened in Launder. 3 months on that dead planet had equaled just 3 days on Earth. The same principle applied to the demon world, Helmont. Time there passed far faster. That alone explained all the unknowns up until now. They all came from Helmont. Realizing that, Fry grasped the scale of the danger. Lord Godfrey didn't remain for long. He activated the magic pass and teleported to the other side. To use the circle, however, a specific key was required. A key Fry didn't have. Holding Clanna's hand, he pulled her away from the crowd. We need to find one of the keys to that magic circle and warn the others. Fast. Otherwise, they'd soon find themselves facing the full Ultra's army bearing down on them. Fry had no leads on where the keys might be. Still, he was determined to find one and escape. Selena would have been able to activate the portal easily. Clanna muttered unconsciously, clearly at a loss herself. Fry frowned and was about to say something, but a sudden voice called out, "Hey, you two!" Fry turned. A strange young man in his 20s stood there, his wild orange hair jutting out like spikes. He stared at them with a grin. "The way you've been moving around, back and forth like that. You're not from here, are you?" Grinning wide, flashing his yellow teeth, the spiky-haired man walked toward them with heavy steps. Fry scowled at being noticed and pushed Clanna behind him, facing the man head-on. "We're all strangers in this filthy place," he replied in a cold voice. The man laughed. What Fry said could be interpreted in many ways, but it was clear enough. Most of the high-bloods present here didn't actually belong to this pass. It was a place usually reserved for the low-blood ultras. "Haha, you're absolutely right. Forgive my rudeness, but may I ask who you are? And why would you need to know?" "Curiosity," the man replied with a grin. "My name is Draxler from Shiskler. I saw you earlier in the crowd, and I've been watching ever since." "And why's that?" Fry asked. Under his clothes, the tattoos on his swords glowed faintly. He was ready to strike the moment it became necessary. But Draxler didn't seem fazed by Frey's hostility. He continued to speak with the same light tone. "Unlike everyone else here, and your cute friend hiding behind you, you're the only one whose power I couldn't gauge. That alone makes me curious." Draxler took another step forward. "So who are you?" Fry, after evaluating the man, determined that Draxler was at least S+ rank, which only made him wonder why someone that strong was wandering around this place alone. Still, Fry had no time for unnecessary bloodshed. So instead, he pulled out the blood emblem of high sovereignty, revealing it once again to Draxler. The man's eyes widened for a second before he burst out laughing and dropped to one knee. "My apologies, Lord of the Sovereign Seat, for not recognizing your rank. There's no need for formalities. Now that you know, step aside." Fry passed Draxler without further comment, with Clanna at his side. But the strange man wasn't finished. "Forgive me again, my lord, but—" he raised his voice slightly. "Would you, by any chance, be looking for the magic circle keys?" The moment he said those words, Fry halted in place. Draxler's eyes gleamed. He knew he was right. "If that's the case," still smiling, his sharp teeth fully on display, he rose from the ground. "Then I think I can help." Having just mentioned the one thing Fry urgently needed, Draxler had now made himself impossible to ignore. Fry had no choice but to deal with this strange Ultra's man, whether he liked it or not.